It's going live now, so whatever we say now go be on the stream, but Justin's got to make a couple changes to get it up. It's going live now, so whatever we say.
I don't see Lisa or Mark yet either.
Correct.
Mark is here.
Well, there's Director Watson, so we will stand by until we're completely assembled. I see our budget committee superstars joining us as well. We are standing by just for a minute to make sure all of our directors are here.
Great minds think alike, Martin. I was just about to say, welcome all you budget member committees. Great to see you, or virtually see you all.
Yes, we're just chit-chatting here for a minute, so feel free to unmute and say hi, budget committee superstars.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
On the budget committee.
Rose, I think we're still waiting for one. Is that correct, Rose?
Lisa, have you connected, Lisa? I believe we're still waiting.
Yeah, and I would like to wait for another minute. We are rolling out a new platform. Jordan and the IT superstars have ported us to Zoom. So we're all pioneering this new public meeting on Zoom. And Jordan, anything you want to say by way of sharing that before we get started?
Not a whole lot other than we have a new tech services host that'll be running the presentations tonight. Hugo Samaron is joining us tonight to run all the presentations. So welcome him to his first one, and we'll keep watching all the different Zoom features here and promoting people into the meeting and back down to attendees as through the different presentations.
Great, Jordan, and welcome, Hugo. And I see all the directors are assembled here. So at 5:46, I will. Mike, are you ready? Mike, you prepared for this to start?
Yes, the staff is ready. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mike. Good evening, colleagues. I am going to call us to order at 5:47 in work session. And Rose, would you call roll?
Yes. Director Lisa Allen.
I am here.
Thank you. Director Sheehan Kim.
Present.
Okay.
Director Yadira Martinez.
No, todavía no voy a hablar.
Here.
Director Jackie Spross.
Here.
Director Mark Watson.
I'm here. Thank you.
And we have Vice Chair Martin Granum.
I am here. Thank you, Rose. And would you survey our student representatives as well?
Maya Smith, are you in the meeting? And I know Devlin is gone until about 6:30, and Ilham will not be here tonight. So it looks like we don't have any of the student reps at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Rose. I hopefully Devlin can join us later, and Maya as well. So I am vice chair, and our chair, Director Erica Lopez, had a conflict tonight, was long anticipated, and she is scheduled absent this evening. So I will be presiding. Let's see. First up is a budget update, and I'm going to pass it to the CFO, Michelle Morrison. And over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Martin. And thank you, directors, for this opportunity again to come forward and talk about our budget, an update in our outlook for the upcoming year. I do want to say hello and welcome to our budget committee members who have made time to be here with us as well tonight. Budget committee members, if your camera's on, and I think they are all on, I can't see everyone, but wave your hand, give a nod or a wink when I say your name. We have Don Wallace, Michael Smith, Nina Carlson, Christine Wanberg, Kim Strelchin, Monica Uribe, and Kevin Murphy. Thank you all for making time to be here.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm going to jump in. I saw a hand up. Director Yadira, did you want to say anything?
That was a mistake. I was trying to like move my mouse.
No worries. No worries. Thank you, Yadira. Back to you, Michelle. Sorry to interrupt.
Thanks, Martin. I want to let everybody know that after months of Zoom meetings, you would think I would have this completely figured out. But if there is someone that can help me monitor the chat, I'll try and capture all of the questions as they come up. Also joining us tonight is Jeff Jones, our Manager of Business Services, and he's an integral part of both developing our budget and monitoring it throughout the year. So he's here as a support, and we'll see he's able to answer questions as well down the road. So with that, we'll go ahead and advance the slide and get started.
Excuse me, Michelle, before you start, I want to remind the board and participants that we will not be using the chat feature.
Thank you, Rose. That is a change. How would you like us to indicate interest or stop for questions? Is Martin going to field those as they come up?
I think that raising the hand would be the best method, if that's okay with you, Vice Chair.
Absolutely, that sounds good, and I'll monitor for that. And I may interrupt, so please be patient with me, but I will react to the hands.
Thank you, Martin. I appreciate that. So here's our agenda for the evening. We're going to talk again about our budget development process. I believe it's important to keep anchoring us back to our normal standard for developing and projecting our budget into the future, as it all leads into what we will be presenting down the road. We have a focus on the outlook again for our current service level. That's our state school fund support and our operating budget. The budget assumptions around revenue and expenditures, just in an effort to be transparent, want you guys to be comfortable with what those are, and they haven't changed since the last time we visited. We have a long-range forecast, some budget strategies to share for state and federal funding, and then other considerations that impact the budget. And then just a heads up that our budget document itself is going to be reorganized, and there's going to be some additional information in there for you guys to look at. So if we could go ahead and advance the slide. So this is a familiar slide to our board and budget committee member, just as we move towards our proposal happening on April 27th. A reminder about the makeup of the budget committee. It's an equal appointment of community members to the number of board members, and that's a requirement of local budget law. And there are steps, including structured publications that all public agencies that are tax funded have to do in order to move through their budget development process and have level of spending, their appropriation levels set in the period for which they're going to spend public funds. So this is all part of a bigger public agency budget law requirement. We have our budget committee meeting coming up on April 27th, and I think April 26th, we will have, and maybe before that, but we're aiming for the 26th to have the proposed document available and ready to review. And at the 27th, Mike will deliver his budget message to the full committee, and there will be some discussion about the information that's presented. We'll try to answer any questions you may have about the budget document. And then there's a potential to have additional meetings scheduled as needed for the budget to be approved. Let's see, our budget hearing and adoption will actually happen at the June 22nd board meeting. We will come back together, and after adoption, we will be able to implement the budget on July 1st. Please advance. All right, probably the hot topic, the standout for this evening's meeting is on the current service level outlook for the upcoming biennium. This is a legislative session, and the governor has rolled out her recommended budget to fund K-12 at $9.1 billion for the 21-23 biennium. And that is the same level of our current biennium. So you can see why that's concerning at the top. We were anticipating that the co-chair's budget would come out at a higher level, but so far the framework that they have released is the same $9.1 billion, and we have some concerns about that as it impacts our current service level and the general fund. So the other component for our current service level is our enrollment trends and student weighting. So that's our resident students, and then also the demographics and needs of those students as the weighting impacts the amount of state school fund that we will be receiving for them. So, oh, I'm sorry, can you go back one? At the top of this slide, for those that can access it, there is a link to a detailed paper about current service level. So if you are interested in finding more information about the next few slides, there's a 2-page document that explains it more clearly. So go ahead and advance. So oftentimes it's come up at board member, our advocates are wondering, why is the Legislative Fiscal Office projection for current service level for K-12 so much lower than what COSA, OSBA, and school districts are saying? And we've had the opportunity to review the Department of Administrative Services calculations that they have provided to the Legislative Fiscal Office, and there are 6 distinct calculations that are different for our funders than practitioners for budget development, best practices for budget development. And the 6 areas are big drivers for us, given that the bulk of our budget is in people. We're a service business. So there's a discrepancy in the salary calculation, insurance, the district contribution and cost towards employee insurance, the PERS rates that school districts pay, and we'll get into that a little bit further. But also the Legislative Fiscal Office doesn't acknowledge any of the PERS bond debt service that is an addition to the PERS rates that districts are obligated to pay. There's also a difference in current service level definition. So as school districts, for best practices in budgeting, when we're developing a budget for current service level, we look at what it would cost in a future period to do the same services we are in the prior period. So we take those, we add some roll up based on our experience, based on the indicators that we know are going to be in place, and then we project, okay, it cost us this much in we use the pre-COVID period, so that year, and we're projecting that forward into the time when we actually expect to provide those services. And so that's the district version of a budget calculation. For the Legislative Fiscal Office, in their calculation, they're not just looking at some projections provided to them by the Department of Administrative Services. They're also looking at the revenue, like tax collections and what they think might be available for state school fund. So they kind of take a different approach, and it seems to appear to be more, what do we believe we will have to spend rather than what the costs actually are for the future period. All right, so that's the first big question. The second question, please advance.
Michelle, I
Oh,
do have a
sorry.
question from
Sure.
Christine.
Hey, Michelle, just out of curiosity, do you know why basically the state doesn't recognize the debt service for PERS? I mean, does that put us at a disadvantage versus other jurisdictions that have not taken out PERS debt? I mean, I know we took out PERS bonds and everything to pay our obligation, but does it hurt us? I mean, it seems like it hurts us in that particular situation.
Well, it doesn't hurt us in the sense that we still combined our debt service and our PERS rate is still less than if we hadn't done anything. So in that sense, we are still saving a little bit of money. The reason that legislative fiscal doesn't recognize it as a payroll cost is because on districts in our accounting, when we report that back to the department in our account code structure, we have to report it as debt service and not a payroll cost. And so it kind of becomes this ghost that they don't count when they're looking at how much it costs. Instead of looking at a total pension, they're just focused on the PERS rates that we pay. Thank you for asking.
So it's a cost to us. It's a cost to us, but they're not counting it. It's kind of seen as more just a liability versus an expense in some ways. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, they don't count capital expenditures and they don't count debt service when they're looking at current service level.
Okay, thank you.
No,
Michelle, you also have a question from Mark.
Yes, Mark.
In relationship to the overall cost of PERS, the debt service really isn't that like we did some bonds, but we didn't do like enough. What I'm asking, like the percent that's being counted as debt service as opposed to actual PERS costs in their calculation, what percentage of our total is being considered debt?
So for our payroll percentage that we expense to pay back the debt service is about 8.5%. So if you think about a percentage of our payroll is, and we've talked about this in prior meetings, a percentage of our payroll is about $1 million. So adding, that's like an $8.5 million expense that they don't recognize. And
that's pretty substantial. Okay.
Yeah, and it's suspiciously close to the whole that we're looking at. So
suspiciously.
Yeah. So thank you. That was a good point. It is 8.5. It puts our total pension costs right up there next to the school rate, but not quite there. Question 2, why is CSL a different amount between districts? And so this is a really tough conversation to have or share with the legislature. And they say, well, so-and-so down the valley, they're doing just fine with 9.1 or whatever. Why are you guys different? What's the difference? K-12 is the same everywhere. And so there are very, very distinct differences on both the revenue side of the equation and expenditure side of the equation for districts. It's very unique. So on the coming up on the next slide, we'll go into a district by district comparison, but these are the main things. We have the reliance on the state school fund is a big factor. There's actually a ratio for that. So the more a district is reliant upon state school fund, the bigger the swings in state school fund will impact their ability to do business. Some districts have other non-formula revenue, which means they can, local option, for example, that's funds coming on top of regular operating dollars. Oftentimes it's earmarked for certain things because the local voters have voted for that additional tax locally, but it's not part of the property tax collections that's part of the state school fund equalization formula. Reserves and fund balance is another area that can be very different district by district. In Hillsboro, we've determined that we want to target a fairly low fund balance as a percentage so that we can use the funds that are provided to us in the period they're provided to us. And we don't have reserves. Some other districts do, for whatever reason, have built up reserves or have had a historically higher fund balance. On the expenditure side of the equation, salaries and insurance are very different for each district. It depends on the region, it depends on local cost of living, it depends on what insurance providers they're using. All of those things for districts that, like us, that have union partners, we negotiate those at the local level. They're not dictated anywhere. We try to maintain a very competitive package for our staff. And so that creates a difference between us and other districts. Again, we have the big PERS and pension costs. So PERS employer rates, they go from 0.05% to 32%. That's just for the employer rate. And so what that represents is for every dollar of payroll that we're paying a staff member, that additional amount goes directly to PERS. And of course, PERS debt service, we were able to talk about that a little bit already, but again, that depends on when and how much a district bonded for, what their obligation is. And in Hillsboro, we have bonded 2 times, once in 2005 and again as a pool, and again in 2015 on our own. And we are saving some funds because of our choice to do that. The last is contract services. Many districts will contract out for a portion of their services, and that provides them some savings. They're usually a very targeted service area, like nutrition services or custodial services and transportation services. And in Hillsboro, we have a real value on having those hired, staffed, and managed in-house.
Michelle, we have some questions.
Sure.
Christine?
Hey, Michelle, I know that you and I have talked before about the fund balance and some concerns I've had about it. Do you happen to know, is it pretty common for school districts to have a fairly low fund balance? I have no idea. I know that various financial standards would, propose that you have a particular fund balance and a policy and everything like that. I know Hillsboro School District doesn't really have that, but I was wondering if you knew any other jurisdictions or like had a comparison that other jurisdictions like maintain a particular level.
I know that we're at the low end. I think that we have been told by both our bond rating agencies and just in comparisons working together with other districts, we have a fairly low fund balance comparatively. But I can't tell you exactly what the other ones are. I just know that we are a little bit low.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that.
Christine and Michelle, I'll recognize my hand and just add to that comment. It was at the direction of previous budget committee and previous boards that we are at this point. So Michelle didn't get us there to that razor's edge on her own. We sort of ordered her to go there, walk the plank as a board, and puts her in a real tight position. So Christine and budget committee members, all 14 of us, if you think we should be at a different place in subsequent budget meetings, this would be a place to have that conversation. So Christine, if this is a red flag for you, please let us know. And I would add that general government, like Washington County, for example, has a much more robust ending fund balance for a lot of reasons. So we're not a general government, but maybe we are too lean. Christine?
Thanks. I just wanted to add, yeah, I mean, that's definitely a flag for me. I mean, I've worked for other local government jurisdictions, and for our fund to balance to be where it is a big flag because of issues for liquidity purposes. It makes our bonds more expensive and everything. Having said that, I know this is this is education, and we want that money to get out to to schools and the kids and things like that. So it might be something worthwhile to at least establish a policy of a minimum fund balance, though, and that's something I'll probably talk about maybe in a future budget meeting. But thanks for hearing me out on it.
Yeah, well, this is why the budget committee exists. We hear all voices. I see 3 hands. I'm going to go Jackie, then Mark, and then Superintendent Mike.
Thank you, Christine, for bringing that up. I remember when we discussed using and lowering our ending fund balance. And it was a really tough decision. So I hear what you're saying, and I absolutely know why we did it, which is what you said, to get the money to the kids. You know, if it doesn't make a difference to the kids' student experience, then so thank you for bringing that up. And but I do remember why we did that. It's a good question to ask, though, because I do know we are on the low end.
Mark?
And I don't think it's the kind of dramatic shift that you might see in something like the Washington County budget. We went from, if I'm not mistaken, Michelle, went from 5% to 4% over the course of 2 years. We reduced it by a half percentage point each time. So we do have a policy about a minimum fund balance, Christine. We do have that. So that policy does exist. And we revised it to offset budget cuts from the state, let's say 4 years ago, probably 3.5 years ago. 0.5% the first year, 0.5% the second year, to try to offset some of the cuts we were going to have to make. So that when you look at the difference between that this board has made, it's 1 percentage point from 5% to 4%. I wouldn't even call 5% a very healthy ending fund balance, right? So Michelle has to cut it pretty thin. And what we did was try to use those tiny 0.5% to offset some of the budget cuts 3.5 years ago, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
But we do have a policy on ending fund balance, and it's where we are.
Thank you, Mark. And Jackie, your hand's still up, but I think you just have anything else to add, Jackie? Okay, Mike, over to you, sir.
All right, thank you. And Christine, thanks for the question and your concern on that. Just as a reminder, some of the things that we thought about over the last couple of years is, for some of the values that we've held around this, is when the state of Oregon allocates money, it is for the current students that we have. And we've all followed K-12 funding for a lot of years now, and there are oftentimes some fairly radical swings in what happens from biennium to biennium, even mid-biennium, some on the exciting years. That can change in a pretty major way. So if we are going to go down this road of growing ending fund balance, and of course that we would love to have a bigger ending fund balance, I would just recommend that we do that in the same manner we arrived at our current 4%. And that would be to slowly ratchet it up, because with, I want to say it's 85% of our budget being on staff, what it really means is increases in class size, because that's where most of the money is. It's a decrease in people that are in the system, because that's how we spend our money. So, so as we get to that conversation, let's just be mindful that that is part of the equation as well. The other thing that we've had to do over the years is we've been able to adjust fairly quickly when we absolutely have to, but that is through reductions. So K-12 funding is a mysterious beast that we have all tried to tame over the years, and it is certainly a challenge.
All right.
Thank you, Mike. Back to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Mike, for that reminder. Yeah, and it was intentional, and it was hard decisions at the time. Yeah. All right. Can we advance the slide, please? All right. So this is an illustration of some real districts. I didn't put their name in there because I didn't ask their permission to share them specifically. But I did my research, and I put together us and 3 other districts in Oregon to kind of illustrate some of the differences in what their projected current service level requirement is and what their enrollment is. We can look at that local state school fund ratio. That's a percentage that I was sharing with you about. It kind of is an indicator of dependence on state school fund or sensitivity to changes in the state school fund, whether that's happening in the current year or it's forecasted. You can see that comparison number 2, their projected current service level requirement is higher than what the state's is. The state current service level requirement is 9.6, and they're significantly higher, but they're also much more dependent on the state school fund than any of the other comparisons, including HSD. And do have a local option where the other comparisons don't. So each one of these factors is going to impact the revenue and the cost for districts. We have the fund balance percentage, reserve funds available. You can see our insurance contribution as it stacks up. And the PERS employer rates. On that one, specifically looking at the total pension as a percent of payroll, for each of these districts, you can see what the employer rate is published on the PERS website. And that's the information that the Department of Administrative Services, Legislative Fiscal, that's what they view when they are looking at district PERS rates. In reality, any district that is paying less than the school rate has also a PERS debt service percentage. And you can see that for comparison one, wow, their PERS rates 0.05% and 0.0%, and that's tied to their liability down the road. However, their debt service alone is 18.2%. And so that's quite a flip of that picture that Legislative Fiscal wouldn't necessarily be able to see clearly. The other part is the average salaries, insurance, pension, and other payroll costs. You can see how those are different for each district. Again, that's really driven by current bargaining agreements, the region and cost of living of the area, which is very diverse in Oregon. So it looks a lot different depending on where you are. And in Hillsboro, we have 1,100 licensed teachers, roughly. And at that difference per teacher, you can see that our costs would be quite a lot more for that. And the average salary amount, that drives every other payroll related cost. So this is just another way of looking at why we're different. Each district has similar variables, but the variables are widely different. Okay, next slide, please. Now we're going to get back to the more standard looking part of the presentation tonight. This is information that we have shared at our other updates, and it's just an outline of the percentage increases that we take into account for local revenue, indirect rate, which we will be able to charge to some of the major grants we'll be receiving. We're also depending on our state and local revenues to be fairly stable. As of our last forecast, it looks like we're going to be having a fairly stable recovery, all things given, even in the insanity of a pandemic. We're starting to see very strong indicators of recovery in Oregon. We're assuming that Measure 98, our high school success, will be fully funded. We are expecting Student Investment Act will be fully funded at the revised amount, down from their original estimates, but still fully funded, and we're excited to see those revenues coming in. And also other sources, Title I, Title II, all of the other restricted funds that we've received in the past, we're projecting those to be available to us at very similar levels that we've had historically. All right, please advance. Our expenditure assumptions, they're going to include some staffing adjustments that we need to make in order to meet the needs of our students. The salaries and benefit packages are kind of under development right now because currently we're in the third of a 3-year bargain agreement with both our licensed and classified staff. So we'll be entering into negotiations soon. But as we embark on the 2021-22 year, it's anticipated that we're probably not going to have our new bargaining agreements in place. So that's under development for us. We do have a services increase, and it's significant. It's based on the last full year of expenditures that we had, which was 2018-19, because we had an abbreviated in-person year last year, and then this year has been very different in terms of our operating costs. Our supplies, we're anticipating an annual increase since our base year of 18-19 of 4%. And then we are expecting that pandemic recovery related expenses will be funded using our federal relief dollars. So that would include any additional expenses we have due to bringing staff and students back in person in a traditional way, beginning with 21-22. I don't see any hands, Martin. Are we good?
We are good, Michelle. Keep going.
All right. Please advance. This is another familiar slide. This anchors us back to that current service level requirement. This is focused just on our general fund operating budget. You can see that given the governor's budget and what all indicators are saying are the co-chair's framework budget, you can see that for the 2021 through 23 biennium and beyond that, we have a significant gap. And the challenge is if we don't close the gap now, it's going to remain at that same level on all of those out years. And so that's a challenge for us. And we want to be sure that we're communicating clearly about what our needs are for an operating budget. Please advance. So here are some potential solutions. We shared these before for chronic underfunding. I call it chronic. I know that that's a strong word, but every year we are coming together and we are trying to find a way to just tighten that belt one more notch. And at 9.1 billion, we may be utilizing some of these strategies. So using some of that fully funded high school success funds to continue to provide some courses at the secondary level that we may have had to eliminate from the operating funds. Similar story for the Student Investment Act in order to maintain class size and caseloads. We may be repurposing some of those dollars as allowed under the grant, by the way. We wouldn't do anything that is not supported by or allowable under the grant guidelines. We have reductions or repurposing of current general fund dollars. And those are trade-offs between what we are planning to do under normal operating circumstances. And in that case, it would be stopping one thing and funding another thing. Also, if there's any fund balance available, we're anticipating that we're going to have a balanced budget at the end of this school year. We've saved some, we've spent some. We're targeting a balanced budget at the end of this year, but our final numbers will be available to us in October 2021. And so we'll report back to you at that time if there's any dollars available to appropriate above and beyond what we have already included in our budget. Please advance. This is my new favorite graph. I've been sharing it all over the world because it's colorful and cool, and I think it does a great job describing at different funding levels for current service level, what we will have the opportunity to do with our student investment account investments that our community made clear were important to us. So at the current governor's recommended budget, that's the very first column, you can see that we're looking at a $6.5 million hole in our operating budget. And that would leave us, after we take out what we're going to sustain from the current year for current service level and student investment account, we would have just over $900,000 to invest in a new way, according to the priorities that we have already indicated were made in our grant application development process. And you can see as we tick across the board, 9.2, our whole, the red portion is smaller, the blue portion is bigger, indicating all the way across until we reach our current service level of $9.6 billion, where no additional SIA funds will be required to backfill our operating budget, and we will have nearly $7.5 million of new investments that we can make in programming for our students.
Michelle, I'm going to recognize Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
And this slide just represents this biennium, right? This is just whereas the previous slide sort of had a graph with it going up and showing the disparity growing year after year. This is just indicating where the number falls for the upcoming budget cycle.
Yeah, this is just for the
making sure.
budget cycle. So this is the first year of the biennium.
Right. This is, yeah, this represents one year. This represents just the upcoming school year.
Correct.
And if it is 9.1, where the government proposed at the far left of this graph, my guess is the blue 901 becomes even smaller or goes away in the second year.
Yeah.
Is that about right?
Unless the student investment account dollars increase, which they are estimated to rise a little bit in the second year of the biennium, then that may be a sustainable amount.
Okay.
To be
Thanks.
determined. That's a whole year away, Mark. All right, please advance. So this is a reminder, and Travis Ryman, I'll ask you to step in if you want to share anything, but at a high level, this is iteration 4 of interactions with the community and schools, and about what our priorities were for student investment account investments. And so you can see that we had 12% allocated towards well-rounded education. We had a significant, I can't see the percentage there. There it was. We have 34.8% towards class size and another 4.6 towards class size, but that was part of our current service level requirement that we needed for the current year. So those faded colors are indicators of CSL that we needed to use SIA to pay for in the current year. So we have student health and safety was by far the biggest priority from our board and community, staff, students, and parents. Please advance. This is another description of those color codings. We won't spend a lot of time on this unless there are questions, but I just wanted folks to be able to see again as a refresher what our priorities were under the student investment account. Travis, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, this is a great explanation. Thank you.
Okay, if we could advance. So federal CARES funding for the biennium. So we do have federal funds available to us, and we will be appropriating some of those in the proposed budget document. You're going to see a description of the amount that we're proposing to access, and then also the first steps on being able to use those funds to anchor back to COVID-related needs, but also advance things that we would like to, that we understand our students are needing, with a big focus on accelerated learning. And you can see this, we've talked about this before, but you're going to receive more detail about that as we propose the budget document. Because they are temporary funds to the district, we are not intending to use any of those towards current service level items at this time. Please advance. We're almost done. Hang in there, everyone. Thank you so much. We have some other budget considerations. Our extended federal program outlook is a big thing that we keep an eye on, whether it's Title I or IDEA, what's happening within those fairly standard federal grants that we get. Also our nutrition services program, and how that is will look for the next couple of years. We've really used that in a whole new way during the pandemic, and we are providing some additional resources to fulfill those requirements. We have our next quarterly forecast coming up on the 19th, and that is a big indicator to the state how generous they can be with funds in all government sectors. And we will continue to advocate for the same portion of general fund dollars for K-12, pre-K-12 as we have now. Student enrollment is something that we're monitoring very, very closely. It's been, we've seen a dip this year, right along other districts, very similar in amount. We are looking forward to recovering all of those students and continuing to grow as we develop residential housing in Hillsboro. And then finally, our bargaining outcomes. I'm sure there's several more considerations, but at a high level, these are the big ones that will impact us in our out years, our next year and beyond. Please advance. All right, so now this is just, again, a heads up on some changes we're making to the document. We are reorganizing it and including some information that is historically been available in our annual financial report, but we're going to include that with some projections into the future as part of our efforts to be more transparent and qualify for actually a national level award for transparency in budgeting. We have, we're going to have different sections and enhanced graphics. So super excited about sharing those with you guys. All right, please advance. At the end, any questions that we didn't get?
I see some questions. Kim.
I'm wondering, as we focus on the legislature and the upcoming roadshow for the co-chair's budget, is it better to just talk about 9.6, or is it better to talk about how the targeted investments that they're trying to make through the SIA dollars is not going to necessarily have the impact that they intended it to have? And that's kind of a question for board members. I'm curious how you all are approaching it and how you would like us to approach it.
Well, I would say yes. I'd be curious, Beth, maybe you would have some thoughts on that, but while you're thinking about that, Beth, let me recognize Shein in case she has a reaction to what you mentioned, Kim.
Not so much a reaction, Kim, thank you for that question, but my question was also in line with the SIA dollars, and thank you for the wonderful slides. I'm a visual learner, and so I'm envisioning the two slides in my mind, but the slide that showed, let's say, the governor's proposed budget right now, where we would have, I think it was $900,000 or so that was in the blue, right? So for that portion that's in the blue, would we still utilize those in the same percentages with that pie chart that Travis made? Will all of those blue portions, I guess, be spent in the same way in regards to the percentages? Is that our intent, or would we have to revisit how we are spending the SIA dollars depending on whether we get 900,000 or, I mean, 7 million?
Yeah, and Travis, you can, he will be conducting the input and feedback sessions regarding SIA. So I'm going to just go ahead and invite him to jump in.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Shein. We talked about this, I think, a little bit last time, but what we are obligated to do is revisit what our priorities were and report back to ODE on what we've accomplished. And Michelle and I just worked together to report back some of the investments we made with that approximately 1/3 funding level. And then moving forward, we do have the opportunity to shift and adjust based on the real needs of our students today. And so we'll be re-engaging with some of those stakeholder groups, especially our focal groups who we engaged to draw up the original plan, to verify that our current plan is good enough or that we need to change it. One example, just as I think about that blue slice, is that today we're investing more than we did last year in direct mental health supports for students in school in partnership with community organizations. We might be asking, is that need growing or shrinking? And we think that needs growing right now based on our own data. So that's one area out of those 4 buckets that we might invest more heavily in than the original pie chart. Although that was as Michelle mentioned, the biggest slice of the pie anyway.
Thank you for that. And I guess as a follow-up, you know, Kim, to your question, for me personally, I feel like we should be doing both, right? I think that we do need to be talking about the current service level shortfall, as well as, you know, with the SIA. I mean, we had spent so much time, and even this legislature had spent significant time and energy and resources. And the SIA was such a huge, the Student Success Act was such a huge win for all of us. And that carried so much momentum for us moving forward. And I think that if we were to share even this slide with folks, this paints a very, very clear picture that, you know, without those funds and without us getting up to service level, that money is not going to where it needs to go. And so I personally would think it would be both. We share both.
I would agree. And Kim, I would add that what I heard from Travis is that there's an opportunity to report back on how we did with SIA. And so as a board and perhaps as a budget committee, if not a community, we underscore to the legislature that we didn't accomplish the objectives of SIA as a reporting metric because we were underfunded. Go ahead, Kim.
Can you make this single slide available as a PDF with Hillsboro branding so we can use it and share it with our legislators?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And Beth, I'd asked if you wanted to add any comments. The reason I'm turning to Beth is she champions our advocacy, oftentimes providing the content that we can go to the legislature with. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Beth?
Just that I think it's really important for our advocacy efforts to keep talking about 9.6 because that is our true CSL roll-up number. And I do think it's important for people to understand that. I do think that coupled with the story, and we were concerned about this from the outset, that SIA and the Student Success Act would be looked at as this wonderful fix, and that would relieve the responsibility of adequately funding state school fund. And I feel like that's the exact situation we're finding ourselves in here. So I do think that story needs to be told delicately, of course, because, you know, we don't want to appear completely ungrateful, but I think it's important that people understand the real situation on the ground that school districts are facing, especially the larger districts.
Thank you, Beth. Mark, your hands up, and then Mike, I'll come to you next. Mark?
No, okay. I would suggest also that the 9.6 story, and talking about how that's really what it costs to continue our programs. And I wish we could come up with, maybe with OSBA, a different set of letters or program continue PC. I don't love that either, but yet, right, figure out, because it really is about the continuation of our programs. It's not, the legislature wants to use this term current service level, which has no connection to our reality. So let's find another set of words that we can use that means this is what it costs for us to continue doing what we're doing right now. And if you don't fund it at that, we're going to have to cut things. And I would suggest, oh, I gotta slow down. We have interpreters probably. And I would suggest that while we have been telling this story for what seems like a long time for us, the idea that current service level as defined by the state doesn't match what our expenses are and doesn't fund education adequately. There are 13, I think, new members of the House of Representatives this session who are hearing this story for the first time. So while we may feel like we are on a well-worn path, many of these legislators are seeing this path for the very first time. So I think sticking to some of those fundamentals of what it really costs to continue what we're doing makes sense. And then to your point, Kim, you know, the idea of throwing in, you know, to Beth's point with, you know, kindness and, you know, warmth of heart, you know, and what it means is that the investments that your predecessors or that maybe you made if you were in the legislature in these targeted improvements are not going to happen because we have to use that money to backfill general fund underfunding, right? So that would be my suggestion on the fact that that's 9.6 is what we would need to continue doing exactly what we're doing today, and that while the story seems old to us, it's going to be very new to people as we talk to them.
Thank you, Mark. Mike?
Thank you. Michelle and I were in a statewide meeting today, and there was there were a number of educational lobbyists and people that have been at this for a long time, and just the amount of frustration and the dismay that we would even pretend that we're close to the current service level at some of the numbers that have been rolled out recently. There was just a lot of frustration about that. And honestly, it feels like a bit of gamesmanship. I totally understand this as a process, but I don't think anyone that's been paying attention to K-12 funding would think that current service level, we could meet current service level by having less money this year than we did last year. It just doesn't seem like it adds up that way. So we, as a state organization, we've also pledged to continue the efforts to get the 9.6 number and to not back away from that number, and really to remind the folks in Salem that without 9.6, we really will not have an investment in education, that once in a generation investment that we'd all hoped about and talked about and worked towards. So with that said, behind the scenes as a district, we of course will develop contingency plans like we always do. We won't be caught flat-footed if it isn't there, but we will continue to advocate at the 9.6 level.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Michelle. This is a content-dense presentation, and you did it fabulously. Truly amazing work. I'd like to thank our community budget committee members for joining us this evening. It's a big commitment. Dawn, Michael, Nina, Christine, Kim, Monica, and Kevin. I appreciate hearing your voices and seeing your faces and knowing that they're coming alongside us at this critical part of our public business. Mark.
Sorry, the only other thing I would add, what Mike just said reminded me, if there is a common denominator amongst the new legislators, it is experience as former school board members. So while they are seeing this path from a new perspective, most of them have at least been tangential to the path. So talking to our specific legislators is one thing. Talking to legislators throughout the state, I think, through OSBA and former school board members from anywhere are willing to listen to school board members who are sitting on the board right now. So Representative Ruiz is a new legislator from the east side of the river and is a current school board member. And he made the point in one of our meetings to say, I represent my district, but I'm making decisions for all of Oregon. So I'm happy to hear from all of Oregon. So, use that voice, that platform we have as a school board to reach out to all these new representatives who are former school board members, because I think you'll find a sympathetic ear.
Thank you, Mark. Michelle?
Just one more bit to folks that are considering advocacy. I know that there may be a perception in Salem that K-12 is flush with cash from the federal dollars, but those are restricted funds and they're on a reimbursement basis. We have to apply for them. We have to go through everything we would have to do with a normal grant and indicate how they are COVID related. Those aren't automatic funds to us. So if that is a question that comes up to you, please reach out to me if you need some additional information about that. I'm happy to help.
Thank you, Michelle. I'll note that we went extra long, but this is budget season, and so this was a top priority, and I appreciate the robust discussion. I'm going to move us on to the next item, C, Latino Parent Advisory Committee report and discussion with Travis and Olga.
Thank you, Martin. I'd like to give my time to Francesca Sinapi, who's going to talk a little bit about our revitalized and growing PAC structures, and then introduce Olga and the team.
Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to take a second to just review what we've been talking about when we're working on engaging our community. One of our strongest allies and our partners in this work is the partnership that we have with our family engagement teams, as well as our PAC members that are here today, and Olga will speak about. Part of our goal in moving the work forward this year has really been having a targeted look at who we're inviting to speak and who we're inviting in for discussions and conversations. So just as a review, our family engagement groups have grown. We now have an Asian Pacific Islander. We are working with our Mesoamerican families and indigenous families, as well as the addition of our PAC of our Black Family Village, which you guys heard from a couple months ago. Tonight, Olga is going to speak about our Latinx partnership and just how we really work to increase the involvement of our stakeholders, to engage them in our school system and develop that trust and reduce that isolation that some of our community members may feel, as well as collectively improve student experience. So I'm going to kick it over to Olga and know that this is work that we are continuing to do and we will continue to do in the months to come. Olga, it's all yours.
Thank you, Francesca and Travis. Good afternoon, everyone, members of the board and HSD staff. Buenas tardes a todos, miembros de la mesa directiva y colegas. I am honored with the opportunity to introduce our very own District Latinx PAC. They have prepared a brief presentation for us, and I am going to allow them the majority of the time to be able to do their presentation because it's really awesome. Es para mí un honor tener esta oportunidad de presentarles a nuestro propio grupo de madres líderes, quienes han preparado una breve presentación para todos. I also want to take advantage of this opportunity to introduce Dorotea Lopez, my partner in all related to the engagement of our parents and community partners. Dorotea and I will be available after the presentation to see if there are any questions that we might be able to respond to. También quiero tomar esta oportunidad para presentarles a Dorotea López, una colega que me apoya en todo lo relacionado al involucramiento de padres y socios comunitarios. Dorotea y yo estaremos dispuestas al final de la presentación por si hay preguntas. Without further delay, allow me to introduce our PAC president, Marisol Cariño. She will introduce the rest of our PAC members. Sin más ni menos, permítanme presentarles a la presidenta del PAC, Marisol Cariño. Ella presentará el resto del grupo. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Marisol, ¿estás aquí?
Su micrófono, por favor.
Perdón. Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Marisol Cariño Sánchez. Soy presidenta del Comité Consultivo de Padres. Hoy nos acompañan con nosotros Mónica Uribe, Marlene Olea, Guadalupe Sánchez y Laura Gómez.
Good evening. I am Marisol Cariño Sánchez, President of the Parent Advisory Committee. Today we are joined by Mónica Uribe, Marlene Olea, Guadalupe Sánchez, and Laura Gómez.
Hoy voy a compartir con ustedes acontecimientos importantes que ha tenido el Comité de PAC durante el aprendizaje a distancia.
Today I'm going to share some important events that the PAC committee has had during distance learning.
Okay.
En este momento hablaré en cuanto a logros se refiere.
At this time, I will talk about the achievements.
El involucramiento de padres sigue activo a pesar de las dificultades que hemos tenido en el uso de la tecnología.
Parental involvement is still active despite the difficulties we have had during with the use of technology.
Hemos participado en la instrucción del CDL y se ha aportado retroalimentación.
We have participated in the structuring of CDL and feedback was provided.
También se ha colaborado con algunos directores, personal de las escuelas y con los comités existentes de PACS.
We have also collaborated with some principals, school personnel, and existing PAC committees.
Se han realizado sesiones virtuales para familias. Y por último, tenemos la incorporación de estudiantes al Comité Consultivo de Padres del Distrito.
Virtual sessions have been held for families, and finally, the incorporation of students to the District Parent Advisory Committee.
Estamos muy contentos con esto porque la participación de los estudiantes nos da la oportunidad de escuchar sus experiencias a través de los 9 representantes que tenemos con nosotros.
We are very happy with this because the participation of the students gives us the opportunity to hear their experiences through the 9 representatives that join us.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Mónica Uribe y soy representante del comité del PAC.
Good evening. My name is Monica Uribe, and I am a member of the PAC.
En esta diapositiva les voy a informar de la participación de los padres durante el estudio a distancia.
In this slide, I'm going to inform you about the participation of the parents during distance learning.
En la tabla podemos comprobar la participación de los padres en el ciclo escolar 2019-2020 y 2020 al 2021.
In the table, we are going to compare the participation of parents in the school year 2019-2020 and 2020-2021.
Los números todavía no están cerrados, pero el año escolar 2020 y 2021, ya que el ciclo escolar todavía continúa hasta el mes de junio.
The numbers are not yet closed for the 2020-2021 school year, as the school year still continues through the month of June.
Como pueden ver en la tabla, las primarias cuentan con más participación de los padres, ya que hay que tomar en cuenta que hay 24 primarias en el distrito.
As you can see in the table,
Mariana, con permiso. Yeah, good.
as you can see in the table, elementary schools have more parental participation, but it must be taken into account that there are 24 elementary schools in our district.
En el ciclo escolar 2021, en el ciclo escolar 2020 al 2021, se vio un incremento en las secundarias y en las juntas del distrito. Esto gracias a que las juntas son virtuales y los padres pueden estar en la junta desde sus casas.
In the 2020-2021 school year, an increase was seen in secondary schools and in district meetings, thanks to the fact that the meetings are virtual and parents can be at the meetings from their homes.
Segunda diapositiva. En esta diapositiva informa lo más destacado del involucramiento familiar.
Next slide, please. This slide reports some highlights of parent involvement.
Los padres han seguido teniendo reuniones virtuales en sus comités de PAC.
Parents have continued having virtual meetings in their PAC committees.
También los padres han recibido la ayuda de cómo navegar el sistema. Han tenido talleres de salud mental y consultas individuales.
Parents have also received help on how to navigate the school system, have had mental health workshops and individual consultations.
Los estudiantes de preparatoria recibieron preparación para la universidad y conjunto con los estudiantes de secundaria hubo programas de mentoría.
The high school students received college preparation and together with middle school students were part of mentoring programs.
Las juntas virtuales con los directores de las escuelas y la participación de los padres incrementó.
Virtual meetings held with school principals increased parental participation.
Por ejemplo, directores y subdirectores de la escuela South Meadows, en conjunto con la Hill High, tenían la junta virtualmente, en donde se reunían padres que tenían hijos en las dos escuelas.
For example, principals and assistant principals from South Meadows Middle School, in conjunction with Hill High, had a virtual meeting where parents who had children in both schools joined.
En estas juntas se apoyó a los padres en la transición al sistema híbrido y dieron apoyo a los padres que tenían estudiantes con bajas calificaciones.
At this meeting, parents were supported in the transition to the hybrid system, and parents were given help for students who had low grades.
Aunque estamos pasando por una pandemia, el distrito escolar como los padres han estado trabajando juntos para el bienestar del estudiante. Gracias.
Although we are going through a pandemic, the school district and parents have been working together for the well-being of the students. Thank you.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Marlene Olea. Les ofrezco una disculpa, aparentemente tengo problemas con la tecnología, con mi cámara. Me toca presentar el día de hoy a ustedes la siguiente diapositiva.
Next slide,
Una
please.
gráfica de... En la siguiente diapositiva... Sorry.
Hello, good evening. My name is Marlene Olea, Secretary of the District PAC. I'm sorry, I seem to be having problems with my camera, with my technology. So I apologize in advance.
En la siguiente diapositiva vemos una gráfica de servicios proporcionados a las familias durante el aprendizaje escolar a distancia.
On the next slide, we see a graph of services provided to families during distance learning.
El número de familias que recibieron servicios fueron realizadas a nivel primaria, secundaria y preparatoria.
The number of families that received services were from elementary, middle school, and high school.
A nivel distrito, en el año escolar 2019-2020, un total de 3,477 familias, en comparación con el año escolar 2020-2021, un total de 4,376 familias.
District-wide, in the 2019-2020 school year, a total of 3,477 families were served, compared to the 2020-2021 school year, a total of 4,376 families have been served.
Esto con la aclaración de que el año escolar aún no termina.
And this is clarifying that the school year has not ended yet.
Siguiente.
Next.
En la siguiente diapositiva pueden ustedes ver los principales servicios proporcionados, tales como apoyo académico en conexión con los maestros y distribución de materiales escolares.
On the next slide, you can see the main services that were provided, such as academic support, connection with teachers, and distribution of school supplies.
Apoyo tecnológico como el acceso inalámbrico y Chromebooks.
Technology support, such as wireless access and Chromebooks.
Recursos como alimentos, materiales y remisiones a la comunidad.
Resources such as food, supplies, and community referrals.
Alcance y reclutamiento para oportunidades para los padres.
Outreach and recruitment for opportunities for parents.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Siguiente slide. Hola, mi nombre es Guadalupe Sánchez y soy miembro del PAC.
Hello, good evening. My name is Guadalupe Sanchez and I'm a member of the PAC.
Muchas familias nos vimos beneficiadas con la ayuda a través del equipo de involucramiento familiar, por ejemplo.
Many families have benefited from the help through the family engagement teams. For example,
con despensas de alimentos que a causa de la pandemia la necesidad aumentó y se ayudaron a 5,461 familias.
With food boxes that due to the pandemic, the need increased and 5,461 families were helped.
El apoyo tecnológico que se convirtió en una necesidad básica, se brindó apoyo alrededor de 514 familias con talleres sobre cómo navegar en las diferentes plataformas de estudio como Google Classroom y Google Meets.
The technological support that became a necessity supported around 514 families with workshops on how to navigate the different study platforms, such as Google Classroom and Google Meets.
También se dieron muchos recursos de otras organizaciones, las cuales también apoyaron a las familias como con asistencia para el alquiler y 185 familias se vieron beneficiadas, aumentando así la cantidad de familias del 2019.
Many resources were also given from other organizations, which also supported the families. For instance, with rental assistance, and 185 families benefited from this, thus increasing the number of families from 2019.
Siguiente.
Next slide.
Aquí tenemos una lista de socios comunitarios.
Here we see some community partners such as
Community Action, Oregon Food Bank, City of Hillsboro, Oregon Law Center, Adelante Mujeres, and Centro Cultural.
Community Action, Oregon Food Bank, City of Hillsboro, Oregon Law Center, and Adelante Mujeres and Centro Cultural,
Por mencionar algunos.
to mention a few.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Laura Gómez Martínez. Soy la vicepresidenta de PAC.
Hello, my name is Laura Gomez Martinez, and I am the vice president for the PAC.
A mí me tocó presentarles la comunicación a distancia con las familias durante el aprendizaje integral a distancia de modo híbrido.
I am going to talk to you tonight about communication with families during comprehensive distance learning and the hybrid model.
Fue clave para nosotros como padres, ya que fueron los medios principales con los que contamos y que nos hicieron y con los que contamos y con los que nos acercaron a nuestras diferentes escuelas.
It was key for us as parents, since they were the main reasons that we had that brought us closer to our different schools.
Y como pueden apreciar, estos son los medios que se nos ofrecieron. Algo muy importante es que se pudieron adaptar a nuestros horarios.
And as you can appreciate, these are the means that were offered to us. And something that's very important is that they were able to be adapted to our schedules.
Como madre de hijos en diferentes escuelas, he podido apreciar el gran trabajo que los directores y subdirectores junto con el gran equipo de sus escuelas han hecho para apoyarnos.
As a mother of children in different schools, I have been able to appreciate the great work that the principals and assistant principals together with the great team of their schools have done to support us.
Siguiente diapositiva.
Next slide.
Y por último, pero no menos importante,
And last but not least important,
el equipo de involucramiento familiar está compuesto por
the family engagement team is made up of
11 facilitadores de involucramiento a nivel distrito,
11 education liaisons at the district level,
10 facilitadores de involucramiento primaria,
10 family outreach liaisons at the elementary level,
4 facilitadores de involucramiento preparatoria,
4 family outreach liaisons at the high school level,
4 orientadores de graduación a nivel secundaria.
4 graduation counselors at the middle school level.
Fue clave para nosotros como padres contar con el gran apoyo de los encargados de enlace.
It was key for us as parents to have the support of those in charge of the liaisons.
Así como nuestros estudiantes recibieron el gran apoyo de sus especialistas de graduación y diferentes programas para no quedarse estancados y seguir avanzando.
Just as our students received the great support of their graduation specialists and the different programs so as not to remain stagnant and continue advancing.
Es todo. Gracias.
That's all. Thank you.
Bueno, pues para finalizar, estamos muy agradecidos por la oportunidad que nos dieron de compartir y si tienen alguna pregunta o comentario, estamos aquí para contestar.
We are thankful for the opportunity to come and present to you tonight. And if any of you have any questions, we're here to answer.
I do see some questions. I'm going to
Recibo
recognize
algunas
Mark
preguntas.
and
Voy a
then
reconocer a
Jackie.
Mark y a Jackie.
Oh, más que un comentario, pienso. Estoy muy feliz que escuchar que los estudiantes están incluidos en el grupo.
More than a comment, more than a question, a comment. I am very happy to hear and see that you have students that are part of your group now.
Muchas gracias. ¿Alguien más?
I have
Jackie.
the same comment, which was I
Tengo el mismo
really
comentario,
appreciate
que es
that.
que aprecio.
And I really love seeing the
También
increase in
me encanta ver
participation
que hay
at
participación
the middle school level, because that's where
en la
we seem to
secundaria,
see a lot of parent involvement drop off.
porque ahí es
So,
donde tendemos a ver que nos participan mucho los padres.
very, very well done.
Muy buen trabajo.
Yadira.
¿Te dirá?
Buenas tardes, miembros del PAC, y gracias por estar con nosotros hoy y hacer su presentación muy excelente. Mi pregunta es,
Hi, thank you for joining us tonight, members of the PAC. It was excellent. My question is,
veo que del año pasado a este año hay algunos grados donde el apoyo subió y en otros que bajó. Una parte donde noté fue más en la preparatoria de este año, que los servicios en esos grados subieron bastante a comparación del otro año, y como en algunos de los de la primaria bajaron un poco. No sé si tiene que ver porque había más necesidad que antes, o tal vez padres agarraron más como mensaje que había ayuda.
oh, so
Oh, sorry, I totally
that's
forgot.
okay, Yadira. So I'm noticing from last year's numbers to this year's numbers, some grades had an increase and some grades had a decrease. So I'm wondering if that is because parents have gotten the message that there is now help available, or please clarify also, Yadira, if I left something out of that.
I was just referring to the services provided. So like some grades had a huge jump in the services that were provided, and especially like high school. And then in others, it was cut back. Well, not cut back, but it wasn't required as much. So there was, I was just wondering if they noticed what that could be attributed to.
Yo quisiera responder. Como padre de familia, mi nombre es Mónica Uribe y representante del comité del PAC. Yo siento que los cambios dependió de la comunicación que hubo entre las escuelas, los directores con los padres y también de los trabajadores de enlace con los padres. Tenemos que tomar en consideración que estamos en una pandemia. Traducir, por favor.
So I would like to answer that question as a parent and also as a member of the PAC. I think it had a lot to do with the communication between the principals and the families, and also the family engagement liaisons and the families, the communication that happened between them.
Yo tengo dos hijos, uno en la secundaria y otro en la primaria.
I have two children, one in secondary and one in elementary.
A nivel primaria, en esta pandemia, mi hijo va a la Mentorbridge y hubo mucha comunicación con el director, el trabajador de enlace y los padres. Pero aún así, con la pandemia, hubo un poco, la participación de los padres no fue como cuando estábamos sin la pandemia. Hubo una minoría, pero aún así los servicios siempre se dieron. Pero también creo que depende de las escuelas cómo comunicaron la información con los padres. Esto a nivel primaria, dando el ejemplo de Minterbridge.
My son is in elementary school. He goes to Minterbridge Elementary. There was a lot of communication between the principal and the family engagement liaison. And even though, we're still in a pandemic, they were still able to communicate with us and offer the services. But we did see that there was less participation with the parents, even though those services were offered.
A nivel secundaria, mi hija va a la South Middles. Vi que la participación aumentó porque los directores y subdirectores se encargaron muchísimo en que la comunicación fuera dada a los padres. Entonces, ahí el trabajador de enlace también trabajó mucho. Entonces, siento que los servicios fueron los mismos. Se dieron también muchos servicios, pero siento que hubo más participación en esta secundaria por medio de la comunicación que hubo.
My daughter is in middle school. She goes to South Meadows Middle School. And I feel that there was a lot more participation from parents now due to the communication from the principal to the families and the family outreach liaison in that school.
A nivel preparatoria, yo no tengo hijos en preparatoria, pero estoy en la lista con los padres de la Hill High y en la preparatoria hubo mucho más comunicación porque se preocupaban de que los estudiantes pudieran graduarse. Entonces los padres a este nivel tuvieron más participación porque estaban muy preocupados por sus hijos, si se iban a graduar, cómo iba a ser la graduación, qué clases faltaban. Entonces hubo mucho apoyo a nivel preparatoria porque ya los jóvenes ya están a un nivel donde tienen que graduarse, donde tienen que recibir becas, donde tienen que tener más información. Entonces ahí yo siento que por lo menos en Hill High hubo mucha comunicación con los padres y mucha ayuda. Y eso lo sé porque yo soy miembro de los padres de Hill High, aunque no tengo hijos ahí, y recibía todos los mensajes.
So I do not have children at a high school level, but I am part of the parents group at Hill High. So I'm part of that group and I get all of the messages that they get. And I know that there was a lot more communication this year than in previous years. They, especially because they wanted to communicate with parents to make sure that their children were on track for graduation, and parents were all the more involved so that they could make sure that their children was going to graduate and graduation preparations. So I don't have students in the high school level, but I am part of that group, so I do get the information.
Gracias. Espero que les sirva mi respuesta.
Thank you. I hope that my answer is helpful.
Sí, muchas gracias, Mónica.
Buenas tardes. Yo quiero agregar algo más con respecto a al número que se ve diferente. Hay que tomar en cuenta que no hemos terminado el año escolar, pero dos de las razones por la que el aumento de los servicios a las familias han sido porque las familias, los padres de familia tenían más acceso al equipo de involucramiento, y también porque en las preparatorias se distribuyó comida. Entonces, los bancos de comida que hay en las escuelas es una forma de alcance y de construir esas relaciones con nuestros padres de familia.
I would like to add something in regards to the question that was asked. The food banks that are on site at the schools is also another way for outreach to be to the parents. So I think that was one of the things that also helped in our increase in numbers this year.
Thank you very much for a fantastic presentation.
Muchas gracias por una presentación fantástica.
Thank you for your involvement as a PAC with the district.
Gracias por su involucramiento como PAC en el distrito.
And thank you especially for being courageous and coming in and speaking tonight, Marisol, Monica, Marlene Olea, Guadalupe, Laura, and Dorotea. Gracias.
Y muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you.
You are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting for sure. We are going to move on to our agenda item D, Learning Acceleration Plan with Travis and Dale. And I'll just say to kick it off, I love that term, learning acceleration.
Thank you, Martin. I think that we can make up a little bit of time in the agenda here and click through some slides and see what questions the board might have. So can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Hugo, if you could just advance one slide. There's a lot of conversation about how we're going to support students into the future. And instead of recreating the schools we used to know pre-pandemic, how do we build back better? And I wanted to share this slide from the Oregon Department of Education because I think it hit on what we've been talking about in HSD in that regard. I know some folks will say that changing the language is just semantic and it's just glossing over the problem, but we think that this is important as a language shift because this is how we talk to our students about who they are and how we're going to support them into the future and how they're not lost. So they're proposing that we start speaking about unfinished learning rather than learning loss. And this one resonates with me because maybe my students miss some things, but we're here to help them learn those things and then accelerate forward into the future. Instead of remediation, we're going to shift our language toward acceleration. And then instead of recovery, which has some negative connotations to it, we're going to talk about renewal. So I just wanted to set us there as a mindset before we start talking about the details of our plan. Our plan is in its first stages, but if you could advance one more slide, please. We wanted to introduce you to the way that we're thinking about this holistically. And a lot of what Michelle talked about with the relationship between our general fund budget, our student investment account, new money coming in for ESSER, and then summer grants. They all go together and we can leverage all of our available resources to make sure that we accelerate out of this pandemic. So what we're going to do is focus on an asset-based approach to accelerating learning. The plan assumes that resources will be invested to support students who need it the most. Equitable outcomes will be achieved when students get the supports they need. And this plan focuses on multiple strategies to learning acceleration. Go ahead and advance one more, please. First, we're starting with data to assess what our students need from us. So from elementary school literacy and math assessments to ninth grade on-track data to grades and credits for high school completion and successful transition to higher education or career. We're hoping that we know right now what our students need, and right now we're implementing strategies to support them. We know that the summer will be a transition period, and this summer will be different than other summers, and next fall will be different than other falls. So just know that we're starting with baseline data and looking at our focal groups and making plans to meet their needs. Go ahead and advance one more. If we think outside the box and if we leverage all available resources, we can establish a learning acceleration plan that produces measurable success in supporting students academically, socially, emotionally, and maintains them on a path to career in college. A lot of folks would tell you that we should just get back to reading, writing, and arithmetic, but we believe that the social, emotional, and mental health of our students is important. And right now, as you can see from our PAC presentation, we're taking care of the basic needs of families and students in our community. And we think of our job as larger than, but also including academic success. So you'll see that as a theme in our student investment account application, and you'll see that as a theme in the way that we use emergency money going forward. Please advance one more slide. So just to show you a few of the next steps that are cooking right now, We're talking about the digital backpack that students will carry with them from now on. If you have a student in our system, you already know how many different apps and tools they're using digitally to accelerate their learning. Part of that is our language arts adoption, which is all digital at the elementary level. Part of that are the supplemental digital tools that students have. Part of our solution will be our summer programming. You know that HSD runs one of the best migrant and bilingual summer programs in the state, as well as our extended school year for students experiencing disabilities. We are going to add on to our summer plan with all kinds of different high school extending the year so students can accomplish credits and graduate. We're also going to work into August with on-ramps back into school for elementary age students. So we'll be sharing a more detailed summer plan with you in the coming weeks. We also will engage with community partners to establish culturally specific tutoring partnerships or increase those. It's not that we haven't had those, but for example, our LYP project where Latino males work with Latino young men in our schools in order to help them at all of our high schools as mentors. That's a blueprint for success as we move forward with partnerships with other culturally specific organizations. We're going to look at revising our middle school schedule in order to increase intervention and extension opportunities for all students. We also have in place our grad coaches. Again, you heard the PAC families refer to the graduation specialists who've supported their students. We're going to continue with that as part of our support system for learning acceleration and students reaching the highest academic levels that they can. We're also going to take a look back at how we coach students within this new context toward career and college planning, because the landscape is quickly shifting, as I'm sure you're seeing in the newspaper. So these are examples of the strategies that we are either in place and we need to augment them, or programs that we're going to invest in heavily with the money that's coming our way and our general fund, SIA, Measure 98, all those funding streams that you've learned about today. So Michelle, I want to appreciate your presentation because I think it's a really good context for how we braid resources. I do want to appreciate Olga too, because she invented a lot of the ways that we braid resources with federal programs. So this is a team effort to leverage everything that's available for our students in order to do all these pieces. This isn't a comprehensive list, but this is a snapshot. So Dale and I are happy to answer any questions you have about the planning that we're doing right now.
I don't see any hands, but I will just volunteer and I'll recognize you next, Mark. I love the phrase unfinished learning, acceleration, and renewable. And shame on me for using those. They're old terms. They're such downers. I can't believe I ever uttered them when these new terms are more accurate and so uplifting. They're forward focused rather than backward focused. So I love it. I think this context matters hugely. It resonated with me. The second I saw your slides, I'm going, yeah. Mark?
I understand how many apps they have, students have, and how important that has become. And the one-to-one technology, I think, is, before the pandemic, we had discussed trying to find ways to make that happen. I do worry a little about, more screen time when we're back in person, as opposed to maybe what they need is a little less screen time. So hopefully we'll find a nice balance between those two things.
I really appreciate that comment as a parent and as an educator. I think that digital backpack is most important during the summer and in the afternoon. And I think that the in-person learning that we do during the day is the most important, and the way to extend learning time, now that we've bridged to some extent that digital divide, is to allow students to learn 24/7. So that's why I'm most excited about the digital backpack.
Thank you very much. Very uplifting. Given where we were, this is where we're headed, and that's wonderful. Let's see. I want to make a couple of notes. So we are joined by Mia and Devlin. Thank you to our student reps who have come on board. And also, I forgot to mention this, but in the digital realm, if I suddenly lose connectivity and just vanish, Director Jackie Spross has agreed to step in and moderate the meeting if I just digitally get outed. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but thank you, Jackie, for being on standby. Next up is our Human Resources Development Report with Kana, Lou Williams, Kim Bear, and Brian Hatz. HR Superstars.
Thank you, Martin. Good evening, everyone. We're pleased tonight just to come together and share an update on our Human Resources Department and to focus on some highlights that focus in on recruiting and retaining diverse licensed staff over this past year. And these efforts increase the diversity of our licensed staff that have been made possible through strategic planning, differentiated approaches, and collaborative partnerships. And before we get started tonight, I'd like to have Kim and Brian introduce themselves.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Kim Bear, Talent Recruitment, Talent Recruitment Retention TOSA.
Brian Hatz, HR Director for Licensed Staff. Thank you for having us.
All right, before we move on to our next slide, I'd just like to take this time to just express gratitude to the purposeful work that Kim and Brian have done along with our amazing HR team to accomplish hosting our first virtual HSD job fair in March, and we had over 280 participants virtually participate that came across from the United States and across the globe from places such as the Philippines. So we're really excited to share some of our work that we've been working on tonight with Kim's focused support, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to her.
Thank you, Kana. If we could move to the next slide, please. So this first slide is just a quick overview from the 2020 Oregon Educator Equity Report, and it's regarding the percentage change between 2018 and 2019 of diverse candidates who have enrolled, completed, and then hired in the state of Oregon. And the next slide.
So this is the percentage of diverse staff in the district, and you can see that we're growing every year at a slow pace, but steady. So if you think of each percentage point as about 12 additional diverse staff, you know, when looking at this, most years we're getting up to averaging about 2% of additional diverse staff. So that's about 24. So 24 doesn't necessarily sound like a lot, but if you consider in a standard school year, we're hiring approximately 100 staff. So we're hiring at a rate of 25% diversity coming into our brand new staff out of that 100. Now, if we were to look at this chart above and back up an additional 3 years to 2013, we were sitting at about 8% diverse staff, and that was less than 100 out of 1,200 teachers. So at this point, we are slightly over 200 and growing. We know that the percentages are gaining slowly, and we're happy with that, but we know that we have a long ways to go.
We can move to the next slide. So numerous studies have shown that grow your own programs and pathways help diversify our teachers. So grow your own includes graduating high school seniors, community members, and also classified staff members. And there are 2 grants that educational organizations could apply for through ODE's Grow Your Own grants. And Hillsboro School District was fortunate enough to be awarded both. The first is with OSU, and it was a partnership that we created with them last year. And part of this grant provides a $12,000 scholarship to our 4 diverse staff members who enrolled last year, and up to 9 diverse classified staff members who will start the program next fall. And I believe there was a short video from one of our staff members who is currently enrolled in the program.
I am not able to hear the audio.
Kim, do you want to just give a brief overview of what was shared by Laura.
Yes, so she had attained her teaching degree and taught in a different country. And she was just so, when she came here and was a classified teacher here, she found out about this program and has just been so excited and just so grateful and thankful for the opportunities that OSU and HSD has provided for her in order to attain a teaching license here. And so she's just so excited to be part of this program. And so we'll move on to the second grant. And this one was led by Beaverton School District. And this grant includes a position similar to mine at PCC, where districts can connect with the Teacher Connect person who will help people enroll in classes that work towards a transferable associate's degree program. And there are also several $1,000 scholarships that are available to our diverse classified staff members. And if we can go to the next screen, please.
I just wanted to highlight a couple of our university partnerships. So the first one is with Western Oregon, and we are moving into our 7th year with them. So 7 different cohorts of students, typically between 4 and 8 students. All of them are HSD graduates. So this year, last year, that was cohort 1. So if we look back to last year, and we had 4 students graduate, and all 4 of them were hired by HSD and are currently working in our school system. This year with cohort 2, we have 4 on track to graduate. 3 of them have already been hired. That happened at the job fair in March. And then we have 1 more out there, and we're confident that once a position opens up that fits their skill set, they're going to be hired too. The second partnership I'd like to highlight is the Oregon State. That is relatively new. Last year was cohort 1. Now this focuses on classified staff members currently working in HSD who also have a bachelor's degree. So during cohort 1 last year, all 4 members of that cohort were hired actually on emergency licenses, and they're currently teaching in our classrooms as we speak. Well, not right now because it's late, but they will be teaching tomorrow, probably around 7:30 or 8. So we really appreciate Kim's work with this because she's worked hard to recruit not only the 4 last year, but 6 new ones this year. She's going to add on a couple more before the end of the year, we know. And it's really about her building relationships and working directly with those classified staff members to get their teaching license.
Brian, I just want to add that Kim has also been really a critical part of facilitating conversations with our administrative team to create a hiring commitments to hire diverse staff. And some of the things that we've made in terms of the values the admin team has elected to support is to widen assumptions about the meaning of qualified by looking at skills outside the norm or skills that are transferable for students that they have worked with in their background that who may be diverse, activities that they've led, or if they've had the opportunity to travel abroad or learn other languages. And I think one of the things that's been also important is for them to think about their current staff and how they're going to diversify their staff, and then looking at the initial and interview process and ensuring that there are diverse team members on that panel to represent the student and community population that they serve. And then as they hire, creating those connections for our staff to be supported through retention. We can go ahead and move to the next slide, please.
So a new Grow Your Own Pathway partnership that will start this fall is the Critical Educators of Color Pathway. And this is a partnership with PCC, Pacific University, and Forest Grove School District. So students that have a year's worth of credits at PCC can apply, and if accepted into this pathway, they'll finish their 2nd year at PCC, earn their associate's degree, and then they're automatically enrolled into Pacific University's bachelor's program when they'll obtain their teaching license. And when you have some time, this is a video of actually a former student of mine and recent Century High School graduate, Mimi Sek, and I taught her at Imlay Elementary for 2 years and have just supported her over the years, and she has applied for this program, and this video is just her explaining the importance of programs such as these.
Hi, my name is Mimi. I'm a first-year college student and a Central High School alumni. In my 13 years of attending HSD, I only had one teacher of color, which left me feeling unrepresented in a school setting. Due to only having white educators, I felt like I couldn't reach out to my teachers because they wouldn't understand my racial issues or have a mindset alike mine. It wasn't that they didn't want to help me, but that they couldn't understand my issues due to not sharing similar experiences as me. I want to become a teacher because growing up, I relied and looked up to them as these strong adult figures that I didn't have present in my life. During elementary school, my third grade teacher reached out to me and got to know me on a more personal level, getting rid of that student-teacher power dynamic. From then, I realized that I wanted to help students, be a stepping stone in their young lives, and help advocate for them on a personal level. I want to get rid of that student-teacher power dynamic, letting classrooms be a setting where we can exchange our knowledge and be vulnerable. Programs like CECP is important to me because as an Asian American, I wish there were more educators of color to support me in classrooms. Programs like these give POCs an opportunity to enter a white-dominant work field and help students feel heard and represented in classrooms. As the generation becomes more diverse, these programs help minorities advocate for students of color's rights and their self-worth, empowering them in our schools.
Okay, and so this slide, this year TSPC has also offered some financial assistance for our diverse licensed staff. Any diverse licensed staff can apply for reimbursement for any licensing fees or testing that they have incurred this school year. They also have a diverse administrator scholarship where 8 HSD licensed staff members who are pursuing their administrator license received a $10,000 scholarship. And I am one of those very fortunate ones who received this financial support.
Thanks, Kim. We're just happy to start this new partnership with Lewis and Clark and Beaverton School District for our Aspiring Administrator Program. And 11 of our HSD licensed staff are currently enrolled in this program, along with 4 licensed Beaverton School District staff. And the focus of the program is to develop leadership in equity and social justice. And additionally, we also have Hillsboro School District current administrators that are serving as mentors to these aspiring administrators during the entire cohort experience at Lewis and Clark. We'll go ahead and move to the next slide, please. Kim, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. So before I took on this role, I was a classroom teacher for a little over a decade. And one thing that was key to my success were the relationships that I built with my students and their families. And the same applies to recruiting and retaining teachers. So here's some of the supports that I provide. In Laura's video, she learned about the program through a classified summit. Twice a year, I hold college meetings where I provide information about the various college programs. I work one-on-one with interested staff members to help them find the best program that fits their needs. I also connect them with my college contacts at each school. And with that, because I am the district liaison, it's extremely helpful as I'm that one contact person between staff members and universities. I also work closely with their university partners to not only help enroll students, but to work to create more grow your own partnerships. Regarding retention, I hold quarterly meetings for our first and second year licensed teachers. And this is where I provide targeted support, whether it's finding resources and support regarding special education, talented and gifted, or dual language. This is also a time for them to connect. This past year, as we know, has been difficult, and creating the opportunity, especially for our first year teachers to connect with each other, is so important. And when you have the time, the video on this page is one that I created in collaboration with principals and shared at one of those events. And again, in closing, when it comes to recruiting and retaining staff members, building and maintaining those relationships is an important part of the process. And I feel extremely honored to be part of someone's journey enrolling in a program, completing it, and then being hired into the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim and Brian. We wanted to open it up to see if you guys have any questions or feedback for us before we close.
Go ahead, Mark.
Just to say, great work. We've already gotten a text from a community member saying that the numbers look great, and really my comment is, for the most part, we just try to stay out of the way of the smart people trying to do good things. So really well done, folks.
Yadira.
The progress that you guys have made, it looks really great. Do we have data like as far as retention, like how long? I know this is like fairly new, but how long are teachers, our diverse staff staying? And the quarterly meetings are great. Do they also have, like, let's say a mentor that they can talk to, like outside of like the quarterly meetings and stuff? Because part of keeping a diverse staff is ensuring that they're supported, right? And that's reasons why some people leave, is just if that support isn't there. So just making sure that we have that in place.
Yadira, thank you for your question. Yes, we have mentors in place that are building mentors for folks to help them. And then also, I know that there's some other work that Kim can speak to around affinity groups that we provide support with. And I know that all of those things in place and trying to one of the things that we focus in on is differentiating our approach to the need of the person and what they need for them to be successful. And we're really working on that retention portion by having those meetings that Kim is holding, and then also other things. Kim, do you want to speak to a portion of that, please?
Yeah, so we do have an affinity group for a licensed staff of color that meets once a month. And also regarding, the quarterly meetings, on top of that, I do meet with, as Kana said, kind of that differentiated support. So if there are other teachers that need more support, I'm here for them. And I do one-on-one meetings with them. Sometimes it's twice a month. Sometimes it might just be an email, whatever support they need, I'm here to help them.
Well, I'll just join in and again, compliment this effort, particularly paired up with our presentation earlier from the Latino Parent Advisory Committee. It's just heartwarming, the work that you and the district are doing to serve all the students and to meet the needs of our community. And what strikes me is the sustained effort it takes to do this work. Sometimes I get panicky and feel like, oh my God, we got to change this today, tomorrow, right now. But you can't. It's taken years. We've gone from, as Brian indicated, in 2000, and about a decade ago, we were at 8%, and here we are at 17%. And it's just hard, tough work. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take a sustained effort. And Kana and Brian, and especially you, Kim, coming into this as a TOSA, you're moving the needle in an amazing way on an issue that's an existential issue for the district. We absolutely, positively have to have a staff that reflects the students and the community that we serve. And we can't get there overnight, but we can get there. And we have to just keep our eye on the prize for a lot longer. But the work that you're doing is so important. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate it. And I think everybody on this call appreciates this work profoundly. Mike?
Thanks, Martin. The thing I would add to that is this work clearly doesn't happen by accident. This is something that the district has had a value around for years. I will say, though, the last several years, this board has provided a level of urgency and really a demand that this work get done. And I just want to appreciate the board for that. This is, as Martin said, this is something that we've got to get done, and we feel like we're making steady process. We continue to focus on candidates that are part of the community and will remain in the community and creating pathways for those folks. But again, just the resources that the board has allocated, the urgency that they've placed on this work, that also helps us get this done. So right back at you. We thank you for your commitment to this work.
Thank you, guys. And thanks, Brian and Kim.
Thank you, HR superstars. Next up is Adam Stewart and our boundary adjustment recommendation for Folly Ridge and North Plains Elementary School.
Yes, hello, good evening. I don't know if you're aware of it, but we're going to be opening up a new school here shortly in North Plains. Yes, very exciting. And it's very exciting. If you haven't had a chance to drive out there, it is beautiful. And we're very excited to start having kids in there. One of the challenges that comes up with a new school is we have to draw the boundaries for this new school, which means kids who are currently going somewhere else are now going to be in that new school's boundaries. So we started a process back on February 25th, where we brought a group of folks together, some North Plains parents, some district staff. We had a person on there from the North Plains City Council. We had representation from Jackie Spross, from Mark Watson, Kevin Zerker from our oversight committee. So I feel like we had a nice broad representation of the North Plains community. We had 3 different meetings. The first one where we presented a first draft of what this could look like. We also presented some guiding principles that we used in past boundary adjustment processes that included trying to maintain existing feeder patterns. We don't want to pull kids from one feeder into another feeder. So trying to maintain that existing feeder, which is a Glencoe Evergreen feeder for North Plains Elementary School, trying to minimize the number of schools and the numbers of students impacted by the boundary adjustment, minimize changes for families. In past boundary adjustments, we've had to redraw boundaries in the same area multiple times. And it's caused us to have to move families multiple times to different schools. So we want to minimize that. Then some of the other issues we try to keep an eye on are transportation costs associated with the boundary adjustment, creating an appeal process for those families who either want to go to the new school or want to stay at the old school, and then how we're going to include an equitable process for considering those transfer requests. So those are all the things we went over at this first meeting. And really what we came away with was a recommendation, a proposal that basically took the existing North Plains boundary and split it in half from north to south. Everything west of Glencoe Road and Jackson School Road Glencoe Road is staying at the existing North Plains Elementary School. Everything east will go to the new Folly Ridge Elementary School. The one change we did make was everything south of Highway 26 is now in the new Folly Ridge attendance area. That was a conscious decision. We do think that at some point, if the urban growth boundary expands, it's likely to expand to that area south of Highway 26, and that's where we anticipate having the capacity. Also included in the board packet were some information on some questions that we had. We had several forms of outreach. We had a survey that we published that was on the website for some time. We used the school's newsletter. Let's see what, I think Jane had something in the district newsletter. So we had several forms of outreach. We only ended up with 7 responses to our survey. And really, we were able to answer all of the questions. one of the big ones was around childcare. If I have a student that's now going to be going to Advocacy Ridge, my childcare is closer to the existing North Plains Elementary School. How are we going to work on that? And in working with Carol Hatfield and the Transportation Department, we feel confident that we can put together a way to get those students from the new school to their daycare in the existing school boundary. So if you look at, let's see, it is page 14 of the agenda, you'll see a map of the new attendance area for Advocacy Ridge and the attendance area for the existing North Plains. The only piece of something other than North Plains that was brought into this new attendance area was a little piece of Patterson Elementary School, which is on the south side across Highway 26. There's no students currently in that area, but it seemed to make just for a smoother transition area out there. And if that area ever does come into the UGB, that seemed to make the most sense. So no students will be moving feeder groups or attendance areas, but we did take a small part of the Patterson attendance area. So I don't need any action from the board this evening. I just wanted to share with you the process that we went through and what the recommendation looks like, and to see if there were any questions that you had or questions that I need to do some research on before I do ask you to approve this at the April 27th regular meeting. So, Jackie?
I can assure you that this was an easy process for me, and so I guess it was great for me to get my feet wet with this one.
They're not all like this. Yes.
yeah. Adam warned us about that one. I just want to say that a lot of thought was put into it, especially the Pumpkin Ridge Road. Is that the right one? That there were a lot of questions about how that was going to split off, and so you guys did a really great job in taking all of that feedback and making it work. So thank you.
Great. Had really good help from Carol Hatfield, Transportation, Tom Luba, with our technology running all of the software and everything. So it was a good process, I think. Yeah.
Adam, I'd just like to commend you for running a great process. Everything about this bond that you've been involved with, which is everything about this bond, has gone fabulously, including this.
Knocking on wood.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear that. Yeah.
I'd like to say thanks to Jackie and Mark for representing the board. And I think in Washington County, they call it getting a head nod from the board when it's something short of a vote, but they just want a gut check. I think you're getting a head nod from the board right now, that we're very happy and we'll be very pleased when this comes back for final. Just for clarification, I just wanted to, you are nipping a little bit at Patterson geographically, but it affects no students, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, well, that makes total sense because one day that will all be houses, but
yeah,
you know, that's a radioactive issue at the state level for probably another decade or two,
yeah.
But at some point, those will be all houses.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Any other questions? All right, hearing none, thank you. Appreciate it, Adam. Next up is Elementary Language Arts Adoption Update from Dale Arsema and Fran.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, board. This evening, I am pleased to introduce Arsema Tovar, our Director of Elementary Teaching and Learning, and Fran Sanapi, Executive Director of Schools, to talk about our language arts implementation update. As you will recall, we adopted language arts materials that we're very excited about, and they had some great additional resources with technology that actually wound up being super essential in this last year. And so we're just really thankful for the board's investment and wanted to have a little bit of time to share some great things about our language arts adoption. So Fran and Arsema, here you go.
Next slide, please. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us. And this is our favorite topic, is to talk about instruction and all the supports that we have for our students. So if you could go back one slide. Thank you. Today, we will learn the language arts assets for teachers and students in CDL, understand HSD's language arts implementation journey, understand the professional development provided, and the next steps as we move into the future in order to celebrate and continue to support HSD's language arts implementation. Next slide, please.
All right, good evening, everybody. It's hard to think back over a year ago when we were first talking about this pre-pandemic, that our biggest thing that we were going to do was going to be to adopt a new curriculum. And then we are here. And so I couldn't be happier that with our choice to go with Wonders and Maravillas. Just as an overview, these were the strengths that we found from all of the implementation work. Just as a reminder, it was 18 months of going through different committees, piloting, having many of you come out and see it in action in our buildings. And one of the biggest strengths we found from this is that tech, personalized, accessible learning and differences, there isn't any way that we could have made it really to the extent that we have without having adopted Wonders Maravillas for our elementary students. The enhancements that it provided us were the needed supplements for our students as they were in CDL or in distance learning previously. A few needed supplements that we had to invest in with Wonders Maravillas was classroom libraries of high interest leveled books. These weren't initially in our bid. Arsema did her magic and worked with the company in order to get us those classroom libraries out into our buildings. And then they also had to, as a system, they had to revamp their reading assessment tools to make it available online for our students so that we could gauge their learning and gauge how successful they were becoming with the standards that we were providing. So just as a reminder, the strengths at the top, we've talked about these before through the process. And then the two listed at the bottom are the needed supplements we had to purchase that were not included in the initial purchasing of the package.
Next slide, please. So instead of us talking about the resources and the benefits and the assets that these brought for our students and our teachers, we have two great teachers that piloted the curriculum the year before and then now are implementing it. So we're going to let you listen to how the curriculum has benefited their instruction, especially in CDL.
Hi everyone, my name is Juana Luna. I work at Eastwood Elementary. I teach first grade this year, but I also piloted the second grade Wonders curriculum last year and Wonders and Maravillas curriculum. So just want to quickly talk about my experience with Wonders, especially the Maravillas portion in CDL. Like I said, I piloted the program last year before everything happened with distance learning and COVID and things like that. And it was honestly the easiest transition than I could have imagined because my students had already started out second grade last fall using this curriculum, and I had already been using this Maravillas curriculum to teach in Spanish. So it was very easy for me to kind of continue that last year. And since we were already using the digital platform, it was very seamless for the students as well. They already knew how to play the games in English and Spanish. It was just some technology issues the first week, but after that, they really played really well and I was able to continue teaching. So I had, like I said, I had second grade last year, but this year's first grade, it's very easy to move between grade levels because the layout of the digital platform for teachers and students looks very, very similar. So for example, here's our Spanish one. It gives you all the daily lesson plans over here, your resources for the teacher, any printables, and then the games that are tied to the lessons that you're using for the week. What I love about this curriculum is how it's already aligned to Common Core it's already tiered for your different students. So here's my small group levels in Spanish, and how all of those are already done for you in Spanish as well. So as a dual language teacher, having done dual language before this program, it was very, very stressful. Whereas now I already know what I'm going to be focusing on with my students in Spanish grammar, how we're going to talk about the differences between English and Spanish. So for example, here's a teacher format on how it would look like for a teacher. So it would give you what to say to your students, and now I just have to worry about how to make that work for my students and my families, instead of like, what am I going to work on this week? Like I said, everything is already tiered for your students also. So here's the 3 different levels, what you're working on with your kids. There's already books and materials that are tied to what you're working on in English and Spanish, and all of the different themes are there. If I jump over to the English side, you will kind of see that it looks very, very similar. The theme is the same. Some of the texts are paired, which means that they're very similar, but they're not exactly the same. Some of them are translated, but most of them aren't. So if you look here on the English side, we're going to be focusing on long I, which doesn't exist in Spanish. So it's great for me as a teacher because I can really, really focus on those specific skills, especially for my English language learners. And again, it looks very similar, but the content is different. So it's very easy to use once you get the hang of it. And if you notice, the games look the same, but they're actually focusing on the long I sound and the things that we're talking about in English class. So for me, when I teach English, I can focus on those specific skills and assign these games. And when I teach Spanish, I can focus on those Spanish skills and assign those games also. The digital platform is super easy for my students to use. And for my English learners, they just hear it in Spanish and they kind of get the format of the games and then know what to do in the English side. And same thing for my speakers who are learning Spanish, right? As they play the English games and then they say, oh, I kind of know how to play these games. Since they look very similar week to week, just the content is different. And so now my students who are learning Spanish are able to learn so much and play these games in Spanish and are learning and are decoding and are using their syllabus to read in Spanish. So it's very, very cool. Like I said, super easy to use for students. I can assign any of these games either to the students' digital portal or Google Classroom. So super easy to use for me as a teacher. Like I said, everything is aligned to Common Core, which is just a blessing in Spanish, especially. This is the English side. So it kind of tells you what different standards you're hitting and how you're going to make those work for your students this week. And
Google, we can stop the video now.
Around as a teacher.
The video is 7 minutes long, so feel free to watch the whole video. We just wanted to give you a primary perspective and then an upper grade perspective. So the next video is from one of our fifth grade teachers, Amanda Bethune, and she talks a little bit about how it's helped her instructionally at her level.
Hi, my name is Amanda Bethune, and I am a 4th grade teacher at North Plains Elementary School. I've been teaching in comprehensive distance learning since March of 2020 and using the Wonders curriculum, and wanted to give you a little bit of feedback on how that's been going. I wanted to start off by saying that I really appreciate that this curriculum is standards-based and aligned to the Common Core. I also really like that there are student-friendly learning targets included, and that's easy for me to help my students understand what they need to be learning from the curriculum. I love that all the resources are read aloud to the students if they choose. It's been really nice as we try to continue to maintain making growth with students' reading abilities, that they can not only listen to the story, but also read it at the same time. And all of the materials in the Reading Writing Companion, as well as the Reading Anthology, are have the capability of being read aloud to students. I, of course, love that the curriculum is accessed digitally. One of the things that's been really helpful is having a digital platform that has some fun activities on it for the kids. The activities have been really great to use in our asynchronous time after the students have been taught a concept. And another thing that's been really great about the digital platform is that all of the staff members can access the materials. So for example, if an instructional assistant is working with a group, they're able to find the materials on the Wonders platform, and there isn't any copying or anything that needs to happen. They can just go ahead and preview those and then teach it to their group. I really like the reading writing companion aspect of Wonders. Some things that I really like about it is that it's engaging. The kids like it. It can be used as the paper material, as the actual physical reading writing companion, which my kids sometimes use at home. It can also be accessed online, and the kids can type in their answers. And then finally, it can be adapted to for use in a slideshow or in another manner. Having that resource has been really helpful. Those graphic organizers are great for the kids as a scaffold and for a great place for us to work on talking about the learning. The assessments in Wonders have been really great because they're all graded online. So that cuts down on my grading time, and I get immediate feedback, which then I can use to drive my instruction quickly. And students also are getting timely feedback. Finally, I really like the quality of the literature in Wonders. I like that there are multiple resources that have really pertinent issues that the students are facing today. And there are all types of literature, including informational, opinion, and narrative, as well as some poetry and some other fun little writings in there. The literature has led to great conversations in my classroom, and in general, the kids really like the stories. So I hope that's helpful and gives you a little bit of insight as how we've been using Wonders in the classroom. Thanks.
So the amazing thing about the online access to the curriculum is that everything is there and already organized for them. So they set their calendar at the beginning of the year, and as the weeks go by, all of the pieces that go with that unit and that lesson on that day show up for that teacher. And if the teacher wants to skip a day, they can automatically go to their calendar, skip the day, and then everything else is moved into the next day. And everything is linked also to the student platform. So the students' activities are also linked to that. And as you can see, this is just like a screenshot of the platform for a teacher in the Maravillas in the primary grades, and then the Wonders Maravillas in the second grades. The setup is almost identical. It's just the content that changes based on the teacher's grade level. Next, please.
And one thing I wanted to speak about real quickly when we're talking about the student resources, when the pandemic hit and we moved into CDL, Dell had this idea about, hey, let's get our high school students involved with our students and get them into tutoring. So at several of our schools, we have high school students tutoring our students and helping them. And one of the wonderful assets that the digital student resources provides is those leveled text immediately online for them to utilize. So a senior from Hill High can be partnering and tutoring a student at, let's say, Witch Hazel, and they have access to all the materials that the teacher has given them already. And there you go, another chance for a student to have an engaging conversation and engaging dialogue and learning happening outside of the content area that they are working within. Student digital resources are many. There's everything. I know they talked a lot about games, but the games aren't just games. This isn't like going online and we're just going to play Travis's favorite ABC Mouse. This is something that these are actually tied to their standards, and they help them with whatever unit and content grade level standard that they're working on. They also have things like word work, writing, like Amanda had talked about, and the teacher can assign them. So that's the student resources that we have available with Wonders Maravilla.
And again, this is a primary student platform and an upper grade student platform. They look similar. And that little check is what the teacher assigns. So whenever a teacher assigns an assignment, a little number pops up that tells them how many assignments they have to do. Next, please. And of course, every classroom got print resources. These are just some examples of the print resources that they have. And now teachers are beginning to open and utilize those print resources as they're coming back into the building. And one of the things that we were able to add to that package was an intervention kit. And we bought one per grade level band. And so those intervention kits have been very useful during our wind time. Next, please.
To remind us about the journey we've been on since September of 2020, a few highlights I just want to hit upon. Back in September 2020, we had 6 hours of PD with the McGraw-Hill trainers. They created HSD demo accounts, which we still utilize when needed. We have asynchronous modules that teachers were able to access back in the spring. During the summer, we had a little bit more, lots more, it wasn't a little, lots more summer PD that carried us into fall. In fall 2020, we created an implementation guide and a website where teachers were able to access as well as administrators. And we reminded our staff that we're focused on reading, writing companion, small group instruction, foundational skills, and focusing on those diagnostic assessments, which were new to our staff. We, at that time, our SEMA and our TOSA team established weekly coaches and leadership collaboration and Q&A sessions that take place every week. And so people can jump in, jump out, and ask their questions about anything that they have questions. What we have found is that many of our coaches and many of our leaders in language arts, both in Spanish and English, are creating materials, and from that we're building upon it to even make it better, the curriculum that we have provided. PD was offered throughout winter 2021, and then moving into spring, I do believe you need to go to the next slide. Nope, that is it. Our SEMA is going to take you what we are planning to do for spring 2021, because that's where we're at.
We actually met with, if you could go to the next slide, we put together a leadership implementation group back in the spring last year, and that group has been with us all along. And so we've met with them several times, and they are the ones that are giving us, we give them a little bit of the information before everybody else gets it, so that they can help other teachers make sense of that information. They've had professional development with McGraw-Hill, and they are the ones that come to these weekly sessions to ask questions for their staff, to share resources, to bring ideas. We also have our coaches support session, which is every Wednesday. And during that time, we do spend one of the Wednesdays a month just focusing on the implementation. We additionally have grade level collaborations where any teacher can come and ask questions. And what we have done, we have taken a survey, we have asked for feedback, and we create these collaborations based on the things that are being brought up by them. So if they want to know more about assessments, then we do assessments. If they want to know more about small group instruction, we do that, and so on and so forth. And then for our principals, we've been supporting them through our weekly PD, and also they are part of that leadership implementation group. So in order for us to move this forward, we had to have all these groups available to receive all this information to support the implementation. And as you can see the different pictures, we don't have pictures of the boardroom with people gathering because we didn't do anything in person. So all of our pictures are from like electronic presentations that we have done throughout the year. And actually we had an implementation leadership meeting today where we asked teachers feedback about what supports and professional development do they want us to focus on moving into the end of the year and into the summer. Next, please. And yeah, we're talking about the future. So we focused our supports and our professional development and the priority standards this year. And we are going to continue to do that. So as we work with our priority standards, we're still going to work on reading, writing companion, the small group instructions and interventions, foundational skills, and assessments. The only piece that we're going to add for next year is the writing component, because this year with CDL and with limited access to students in person, we felt that was just going to push our teachers overboard. So we were like, we're not even going to touch it. Our teachers are teaching it as best as they can, but our focus will be through the summer to provide supports and professional development to actually do the writing piece of Wonders and Maravillas to help support. So as you can see, we're not really adding much more to their plate. We're just, going deeper and adding that piece of writing. Next, please. Thank you so much for your support. I mean, this adoption couldn't come it came right at the right time, and which is appreciated, because I think it made everybody's life a lot easier, as teachers, as administrators, as support staff. Everyone in our system has access. Even our secondary people can have access to the curriculum because of the demo accounts that we have. So thank you so much for your support. Any questions?
Jackie.
I have a question about the technology, and I worry about our kinders and our littles and the ability to comprehend and use that technology effectively. And then I had another question about the assessments. I wanted to just understand kind of how much time that takes for a teacher and what kind of supports we might have for our teachers in handling and managing the time it takes for the assessments. I'm assuming it takes several days. I don't know.
Okay. Let me answer. Yes. Okay. So regarding the technology piece, yes, we also agree that it's just, it's really hard for our kindergartners to be engaged, although we have learned from them how resilient and smart they are, and how they have been able to manipulate the technology and access their learning. We are very excited to be in person, and in order to bring our students in and be able to do effective instruction, especially foundational skills with our students. We need to hear them say the sounds. We need to hear them read out loud, and it's just a lot easier. To begin with, the McGraw-Hill curriculum that we have has that online component, but it was never meant to be in an online only curriculum. So we're just utilizing it because, well, I'm glad they have that component, because we would have been in trouble. But it's not the main way that we are planning on utilizing the curriculum. It should only be like another source of supplemental support, or source for a teacher or a student to access materials anywhere they are. So that's that. And then assessments, we started with just, we chose the diagnostic assessment because it does give us, that the teachers do a 1 minute assessment, a reading fluency assessment with the students at the beginning of the year. And then they did it again in January. It does take a minute a student. I would say on average, maybe a minute and a half or two, because we have to like set the student in, let them, read the passage, and then, take notes on it. Our principals have been able to work with teachers by giving them classified staff support to help them administer the assessments. Our specialists have supported them as well. We also are utilizing the comprehension assessment. That one takes about 30 to 40 minutes. And the students can actually hear the passages as they're taking the assessment, or the teacher can read the assessment out loud to the students. So that hasn't been as smooth as we wanted it to be because of CDL. So some of our teachers decided this time to wait until they were in person to actually do it together with the kids that they have in front of them, and then just deal with the CDL kids at a different time so that they can give them the time that they need. And this spring, we're looking into running records with the kids, and we're actually putting that guidance together so that our teachers can really focus on those kids that are below grade level and make sure that they understand how to support them and where they are at by the end of the year, so that we can be ready for also either the summer or the fall to be able to support our students.
Great,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Jackie and Arsema. I see Yadira and then Sheehan.
I have just more of a comment, and so and it kind of touches a little bit on Jackie's question. So I have a first grader, and so she was using the Wonders like the games and stuff, and so they're pretty intuitive. Like, you know, I had to like help her get in, but once she was on the game, she kind of knew what to do, and it was like I didn't have to like help her with it anymore. And so I was really impressed with it, and I know that she had a lot of fun, you know, with the reading and the games and everything on there. So I really enjoyed it. She enjoyed it, and I think it's great.
Thank you. And mine is also more of a comment as well. It is so exciting to see just the feedback that we are getting from the teachers who are utilizing this. I feel like I've been able to see this kind of come full circle because I was on the curriculum advisory committee when we were reviewing the different language arts curriculum. And I also got to tour a school that was implementing it. And then now to be able to see how this has been implemented through CDL, it is just so exciting, and I'm so happy to hear that our teachers are utilizing this well and able to adapt it. And it sounds like it truly is a system that is working for our teachers instead of trying to get certain processes. I know that when it comes to curriculum development or even, you know, trying to align standards and trying to come up with, you know, what you're going to teach in that day, I know that that can be such a huge stressor for our educators. And to know that this is a system that truly helps and just ushers just more engagement and learning with our students is really exciting to hear. So thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you for sharing little tidbits from the teachers. It was very nice to hear.
Thank you.
Mike, I'm going to go next, and then I'll pass it to you for the last word on this excellent presentation. I just want to say it's heartwarming, it's reassuring, it's profoundly satisfying, as I like to say, to know that during a pandemic we stayed the course and sustained a routine upgrade of our language arts curriculum that wasn't sidetracked or derailed. We didn't take our eye off the prize. We kept our heads down and soldiered through this and got to this great place. And my compliments to you, Arsema and Fran and Dale, and also the vast army behind you that really did the work to bring this about. I salute them all. Mike?
All right, thanks, Martin. And I think I'll ask Fran to actually have the last word, but or Arsema, whichever is the best fit here. But one of the things, as you know, it's a substantial investment when it comes to adopting a new curriculum, and that takes a number of years to save for. And the board helped to expedite that process this time around so that we could get this curriculum, because we knew the amount of time that teachers were spending pulling resources and researching, and to Sheehan's point, just working to align materials with standards. And so we wanted to get that done. We wanted to meet the needs of our kids. So if we were to be asked, how is this curriculum different than the last one? And what would you say the best parts of it are? What would our answer to that be?
Sorry, go ahead, Fran.
No, you go, Arsema, and then I'll fit.
Some of the answers that we saw today, because we got fresh feedback today, is just the amount of resources that teachers have access to, which was so different. Before it was a teacher guide, and and a book, and that was it. And now our teachers have just a plethora of resources that they have access to, from kindergarten all the way to sixth grade. If they have students that are way below grade level or above grade level that they can access, that is connected to. I think the biggest thing here, Mike, is that these resources are connected to the actual standards and skills they're teaching on that unit. And before, I remember being the teacher, I had to go find everything to connect it that my curriculum didn't have. And so that's what's amazing. And also just that the global skills, of technology, and being able to have our students play within that technology world and get the skills that they need in order to be better global citizens. I think it's another huge asset of McGraw-Hill.
And I think my partners would say too, that I'm looking at Audrey and Dell, that it provides us with that guaranteed viable curriculum that our students need. The one thing that I think that what Wonders Maravilla has offered us is students are being taught grade level standards. And a lot of times when you're teaching language arts, you tend to meet them where they are at and try to move them up. And the unintended consequence of that is that you never do get the grade level standards because you're always teaching just a little bit behind. This curriculum provided the grade level standards at a rigorous, culturally relevant level where we're pushing our kids cognitively, but then provided them with the resources to have small groups to meet them where they're at. That was not, both of those weren't meeting together in the middle for that curriculum up until we got this. And I do want to say one thing to Jackie. Jackie, I hear you loud and clear as a mother of 2 kids who have sat at home for the last 14 months because their district isn't in yet. I worry about the screen time too. And I think what our SEMA hit upon is key. This was never intended to be an online curriculum that we're just pushing this. I was in a building just the other day and the kids were passing out, guess what? There's anthologies and there's actual books you can hold on to. And the kids could not pull themselves out of the books. First of all, they smelled fresh because nobody else had ever touched them for the last 6 months. And they're just like digging through and sweeping. I'm like, and he was a second grade. I'm like, this is a book. You probably haven't seen one in quite some time. You're going to enjoy it. And you couldn't get the kids. So there is still that love for holding that textbook in their hands or that workbook. Okay, I didn't say workbook, take that off. The reading, writing companion to help them with their learning, that is still there. And that is what needs to be focused on now that we have a majority of our students back in school.
You're right. My daughter still buys paperback books, even though she has a Kindle and a laptop. She's like, books. So thank you.
Friend, you made me laugh. I'm thinking of Fahrenheit 451, where touching a book is subversive. You got to get it back to where we can actually touch books. I look forward to that too. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to move us on to the next item, student representatives selection process from Superintendent Mike Scott.
All right. As you know, we have placed a huge value on having student voice involved in board meetings. We've since the inception of that, we have felt that the perspective that is presented and the voice that is presented, that is just something that has served us very well. You also remember that this is on a rotating basis. So each year we have students from 3 of our high schools. During the 21-22 school year, we are going to have students represented from Glencoe, Hill High, and Miller. And we're pleased to announce that we've had 7 students apply for those positions. Our goal as we interview candidates is to get students that can represent not only their own voice, but the voice of the entire student body. We look for a diverse group of candidates that matches our student body representation. And we have a couple decisions to make this evening. The first one is that we need to decide who's going to be on the interview committee. We can have up to 3 board members that would do that. Rose would also serve on that to help keep track of things. And so we could have a maximum of 3 board members. So we don't have to have 3, but that would be our max. We have identified a potential date as Wednesday, April 21st. And the reason for that is that's a Wednesday and it's an asynchronous day for students, and it might be just the most convenient for them. The other thing that we need to decide is how many of the candidates do we want to interview? Do we want to interview them all? Do you want to make a decision to interview only a certain number of them? And if that's the case, then I would recommend that the interviewing committee be the folks that narrow it down and do that selection process. The interview questions that we've used in the past are in the board packet. We've gone with the same questions over the last couple of years, and they've served us well, but obviously open to suggestions if there is something that you would like to see represented in there. We talked a couple months ago now, I believe it was February, where we all agreed that the involvement of the 3 current student reps would be a welcome part of this process. And at this point, we're planning on the 3 students hosting a chat session prior to the interviews so that candidates can meet each other, ask questions about the current student reps, and just get any insights that they might be able to offer. So 2 tasks tonight. Who would like to be on the interview committee, and should we interview them all? I do, just as a reminder, last year, I want to say we had 12 or 13 candidates, and I believe all of those folks were interviewed, and we were able to do that in a fairly expedient manner. So your thoughts?
Jackie?
I think that it's important to interview them all. I think this is a great opportunity for them to learn about interview skills and what it's like. And they took the time and expressed the interest for the position. And so I think that we need to respect that and interview them. And I would be on the interview committee. I didn't do it this last time, but I did it before. If others would like to that haven't, I could do either way.
I think Jackie just volunteered. Thank you, Jackie. Any others, colleagues on the board want to participate? You can't tell it, but I'm looking at you. Mark.
Yeah, I'd agree with the idea of interviewing them all. Look like 2 from 2, 1, 4, right? So I think, if we can interview them all, I would say that that's the way to go. And I too participated maybe 2 cycles ago, or the original cycle. I can't remember. And I'm happy to do it again if there's no one in whose way I would be standing who wants the opportunity.
This would be virtually, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm assuming I'm actually out of town that week, but I can still do it. As long as it's virtual.
Well, Mike, I don't want to put any pressure on anybody. You have 2, and to my other colleagues, including Erica, if you want to participate, there's room. Let Rose know. Is that fair to say, Mike? Okay. All right. So we got 2, which is good, and there's room for 1 more. Mark?
And all of the student involvement will be before the interview sessions. We won't have any students with us the day of the interviews.
That was the current plan.
Okay.
That was the current plan. It's that we would have them involved prior to the interview process. Doesn't have
I think virtually is a little bit different. I think at one point, maybe I've been involved in 2. At one point, we had a student rep like in the lobby of the district office, meeting them to sort of diffuse some of the tension, to take some of the pressure of it off. But I don't know if that works in a virtual environment, right? So maybe, just the before session makes more sense.
It worked out perfectly to have them in a virtual sort of waiting room, hyping up the kids, answering questions, and meeting each other.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Rose. I'm going to move us along to Student Resource Officer Update with Morgan Quimby, Public Safety Chief Alex O, and Superintendent Mike Scott.
With Alex's title, it's just hard to measure up. So this is on page 20 of your packet. And thanks for the opportunity to just give you an update on this. As you'll remember, we have been in a 10-month process. And during that time, we've involved the board and the community and staff and students. We've involved PACs. And we've received a lot of input and been very deliberate in our outreach on this topic to see what was important to the community. And during this time, we've taken input and we've gathered concerns. And it from that, it is clear that it was time to have the next iteration of our school resource officers. The role and responsibilities of school resource officers have changed a number of times over the years, and it's clear we're at a moment in time where they need to change once again. With that in mind, we have drafted a comprehensive intergovernmental agreement. And in that IGA, you'll find that it outlines the duties, kind of some of the supervision stuff, the training that would be necessary, the accountability piece, responsibilities, and kind of a review of the processes that we would use to stay on top of all that. And you'll also see that that the concerns that were raised, they've been addressed in this IGA. So tonight our goal is to do two things. It's really to orient you to the document. We won't be going through this on a page by page basis. It's pretty long. And you've seen most of this before. We've been in the process of getting this checked out with all of the stakeholders, legal folks. And over the next couple of weeks, if there are any questions that you have, or if we can shed light on anything, would welcome that those questions from you, so we can get those answered. And then on April 27th, we would actually hold a vote for the IGA. Following that vote, the city of Hillsboro and Washington County, they would do their work, and they would hold their votes as well. But that's where we currently are. And at this point, I'd like to just turn it over to Morgan and Alex to go over, just to orient you to the document. So I'll turn it over to them.
Thank you, Mike. So just to kind of get you coordinated with where we're at, that IGA document, as Mike mentioned, that intergovernmental agreement, we switched to that out of a request from HPD just because that's more current with the standards. And since we're a government agency and our attorneys had no issues with it, that's why we went ahead and made that switch. So the first part that you will see is going to be that IGA, and that's a lot of that contract language. It's going to be very similar to our past MOUs that we've had, which is really just that who's responsible for paying what, the insurance rates, who, do we hold each other accountable, and I can never say that word, but that word, and roles and responsibilities. And then the second piece is what you would be most familiar with, and we have discussed and shared. And as Mike mentioned, we got a lot of feedback, and that is Exhibit A, is what it's titled now. And that's our scope of work. And so that's really on now what does it look like when an SRO is in our school? How do we interact? What is their role and responsibilities? Again, we really wanted to create clarity and that trust and transparency with communities, because that was something that was really constantly shared with us. So people wanted to know what's the day in the life of an SRO? What do people do? What is life like for our students with SROs and the interactions? And so there hasn't been a ton of changes since our last meeting and the last time we shared this. Just unfortunately, a little bit more legal speak has gotten added in, because we do have to make sure that we follow, that all attorneys are comfortable with the language. But we still have the training requirements, the limitations on being involved in school discipline. We have also started drafting a document that we'll share with our administrators around their responsibilities and, as partners with SROs, making sure they're aware of the changes that have been made to the relationship and the partnership, as well as deadlines. So there's a lot of different deadlines that we have in this document as far as annual training requirements. When will people be notified of training requirements? When will training requirements be completed by? And so we just have a lot more information around making sure that everyone knows who's responsible for what, when, and how. And then one of the things I just really want to highlight that I think is exciting is that we also have included, and this has been mentioned before, but I just want to make sure we are all aware that every year we are going to be gathering feedback from our communities and our families around SROs and their relationship and interactions with, and then we'll be drafting updated goals for our program. And so part of that, not only is it great that we are going to be reaching out to our community on an ongoing basis, but the work that's being done to create trust and transparency and the different parent advocacy groups that we're doing, that's going to really strengthen the responses we get. Because right now it's really one of the challenges is making sure that we get feedback from all of our stakeholders and community members. And part of that is just building that trust. And so it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of energy that we've been putting in and will continue to make sure that we hear the voices of our most marginalized community members that may have not spoken up or may not feel comfortable with sharing concerns. So we can continue to, with our SROs and with HPD in Washington County, resolve those and mitigate concerns that they have. And so I think this is a really great first step to changing the culture and shifting the way that SROs are seen and how we interact with them. I can go into a lot more detail about the document, but I feel like we've done that a few times. But I'm happy to talk about it more. Alex, do you have anything to add?
No, that was a great recap. I was just going to add to just a comment that this document that you see here should be very similar to the latest document that you reviewed. There weren't a lot of edits made to this. The edits that were made were, mainly, like Morgan said, some legalese edits and some edits that were brought up via some union or association discussion, but a similar document to what you were presented to leading up to this.
I'd like to open it up to colleagues for a comment. Oh, I see a hand. I'd kind of like all voices to be heard on this. This is a hot button issue and we spent a lot of time on it, but Jackie's hand went up first. So Jackie, please.
I always have questions. So when can we expect the first report? I know it says so for September, October 5th will be the due date for the month of September. So given COVID and that we're not, the kids aren't back in school full time, and I'm not sure what the interaction is going to be, when can we expect, after this is processed, to have our first report?
Alex, do you want to respond to that?
Hey, Jackie, where are you reading off the document? Just
I just had it and then I lost it.
Okay. I think, with, like you said, with COVID and just the uncertainty of when things get back to normal, when we can get we want to make sure that the training gets completed prior to that both parties agreed to. And I think initially when we wrote this, we wanted to have all that in place by September when school fired up. So we are hoping that we can make that happen. And HPD's and Washington County's commitment is that as soon as this moves forward, we're gonna get bodies back in, get the training tackled. I think we can stay pretty close to the general timelines that we outlined in this.
Okay, it's on page 29 under data collection. It talks about the activity report and then the training, when the list of training is due. So it was just an example of, September will be submitted by October 5th. So it was just an example, but.
So I think, and Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, because there's several different ways that we're gonna be reporting. So like the professional development is gonna be at the end of every year. They will submit a document just outlining what professional development was taken, just so that we can continue to know like what training our SROs have had. And then once this is signed, all parties have signed the IGA, then and they're back in the buildings, whatever that looks like. Then we can start looking at those like calls for service reporting. Is that what you're thinking of too? And so then we'll start that regular schedule with that, knowing that it will look different because we're not back full-time in person full-time. So
do we know when in the year we will be doing the survey of community and school students?
Yeah, that'll be in
the
the
program?
spring. Yep, it'll be in the spring around May. And then the hope is that we'll be able to come together in June and draft goals, revisit that, reflect on the experience. Obviously, since we're not in school right now and we're not having contact with SROs, there's not a whole lot to survey. So probably that first feedback survey will be where we're getting the full experience, I guess, full meal deal kind of thing, will be next June.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Jackie, in that specific data collection example that you gave, I don't see why we cannot meet a monthly report submitted. So if we are fired up, SROs are back in school September, I can't anticipate us not meeting that monthly report.
I was just going to offer, piggybacking on Jackie's excellent question. Part of the intent of this whole thing was to raise the visibility on this program at the board level, at the community level, at the city level with our partners in the county. And to that end, there's a variety of ways that the district typically brings things up to the board for our engagement. One example was earlier tonight with the Human Resources Department report. There's a rhythm to those things where these departments come to the board and present, and it's kind of a refreshing of the board's knowledge, and it's a showcasing of what the department has done. And so it's just win-win all around. And then there's also, in Michelle's financial report, there's all kinds of wonky numbers that we see regularly every meeting. And so, you can kind of take those two examples and sort of land the SRO, the big agreement that we're signing up to now, and kind of land it in the rhythm of board visibility, board work. Some of it's wonky, will be every meeting, and some of it is periodic, maybe annual. And I think that's sort of meets the intent of this big look at this really critical program. Any other colleagues that would like to comment? Well, I guess Yadira, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I've read through it, and I'm happy with the changes to like the transparency of it. I like the added yearly survey. That's really good. I also like that we added language in there for the SRO to have the opportunity to interact with our parent advisory groups. I think that's super important and will go a long ways in building trust with SROs, and then also parents of our most marginalized students. So I like that. And really, I have no questions about it or like any changes. I just wanted to really acknowledge the changes that were made and the concerns were addressed, and I really appreciate that.
I concur, and Yadira mentioned it, and I meant to, and it slipped my mind. The support as we engaged, and we did engage a lot of the community from the parent advisory committees was important. Their voice was heard. It was sought, and it was heard and incorporated in. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Public Safety Officer Alex O. I think you personify everything we want in this program with your conduct and your competency and your excellence in this area. And so you build confidence personally in this program, and you really stepped up. This is a high-vis issue, and you engaged with us as a board and the community in just a profound way that was just exactly what we needed. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Morgan as a TOSA. You came into this issue set and just brought tremendous staff competency to this basket of issues that was a hot button. It was in headlines, and there were stakeholders all over the place, many of them external to HSD, and you probably kind of got everybody settled down and just let's eat this elephant one bite at a time and steady work, and we'll get from beginning to end. And here we are with a product. I think that's an example to hold up to the state, if not nationally, on how to run an SRO program appropriately. And I'll just wrap up my comments by saying to my colleagues, I think this would be great fodder for an OSBA workshop. Unfortunately, I won't be here to participate in that, but perhaps the HSD team could celebrate and showcase this good work to others through OSBA or other statewide formats. Superintendent Scott, I'll give you the last word on this one.
I just appreciate the process that we've gone through, and all along, it was a value of the board to make sure that we get this exactly right and that we involve all kinds of stakeholders in this and all viewpoints throughout the community. Our law enforcement partners have been incredibly willing to engage in this conversation and make sure that the next iteration of school resource officers fits the needs of the students that we serve. And so we're very thankful for their engagement and look forward to a continued long partnership with them. So we'll be back in a couple weeks to get the final vote on this, but appreciate everybody's input. Morgan and Alex, thank you so much.
Next up, return to in-person learning information with Travis, Dale, and Superintendent Mike Scott.
We're going to go right to Travis on this one. I know it says Mike's updates or something on the next slide, but we're going to skip me and I'll chime in a little later down the road.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike. Can you all hear me? Excellent. This one's hard to read, but you're not supposed to read the words. This is the curve over the last year of COVID data. And the point of this is that you know that last week we were at 99 cases per 100,000, and this week we reported at 123.2 cases in Washington County. And so the curve is going the wrong direction toward the yellow and red zones. And I just wanted to clarify, because I've gotten some questions from board members and community. You all know that at 200 cases per 100,000, we need to make some decisions and collaborate with our local health authority about whether it's safe to be operating in-person instruction. But it's not an automatic line that we cross. And what I wanted to assure the board and the community is that when we get to 200 cases per 100,000, which I hope we don't, wear your mask. We will work with our local health authority folks, and if we're able to show that we have safety measures in place to contain community spread, we will not be encouraged to close down in-person learning. Instead, we'll be encouraged to maintain status quo and be cautious if adding any additional programming. So at this point, what we hope to see is the curve go down in the opposite direction, and by maintaining our safety protocols in schools, we hope that there's no evidence that schools are the reason for community spread. And our current data shows us that community spread is not happening in schools, it's happening in the community and in households. So we'll continue to monitor this situation, but I wanted the board to understand those facts so that you can respond, because I know you're getting comments from community members and questions. So happy to answer anything more on that front. The next slide is a reminder about our timeline that we now have K6 in pre-K through 6 in school, and that next Monday is the day we launch our secondary programming. So just a big shout out to everyone who has supported us in returning to school. And it is so inspiring to be out there. I know board members, you are the last in line to get vaccines, and I'm sorry that you're not able to be out there day to day. But thank you for prioritizing educators and in helping us get back to school. I'll pass it to Dale to give an update on the current conversation around assessment and state level testing.
We could just leave that slide on because it's my favorite slide now. We're going to get all our kids back next week. Couldn't be more excited. But if you could advance the slide. So I did want to talk a little bit about state assessments. And before we jump into it, just want to share some appreciation for Tom Luba, who facilitates and makes sure we're in compliance with the state assessment, ever-changing landscape of state assessment, and ensures our teachers and staff are appropriately trained and resourced. And he's with us tonight, and just want to appreciate him for his leadership in that area. So next slide. As you know, the United States Department of Education has required us to take assessments, and we have been compliant under Division 22 for quite a while. And last year we waived our state assessments because of the transition to comprehensive distance learning and just the state that we were in as a nation. This year, Oregon sought a waiver on the assessments, but it was denied. However, adjustments were made to the assessment. And so I wanted to kind of review those with you. So typically we do assessments in English language arts and math at every grade, and science at some of our grades. But the waiver is basically allowing our students to just take one test in grades 3 through 6. And there's an optional test that they may participate in the other grades. And then in grades 7 and 8, they need to take English language arts and math. And typically, as you see, 8th grade would take math, science, and ELA, but they're only required to take 2, and then there's 1 optional test in 8th grade. And then the same thing for 11th grade. Required tests are English language arts, math, and science. So that's the first step of the amendment to our assessment. If you'll go to the next slide. The other thing is they have modified the blueprints or the testing template or structure. And so normally students take a multiple choice portion, they may take a short answer portion, and then they take a full performance task where they do writing, they do some reading and do some writing, or they do a problem solving piece in mathematics. And they have reduced the testing by about 60%. And so this is the estimated time of the tests per grade level. So you're looking at about an hour, a little over an hour in grades 3 through 6, and then about an hour for each test for ELA, math, and science at the 7th and 8th grade and 11th grade level. So just the short version, except for science is a little bit longer, but the short version is we're looking at about an hour for grades 3 through 6 and about 2 to 2.5 hours for grades 7, 8, and 11. And again, that's the modified blueprint for this year. Next slide. So some overall facts about testing. So districts are expected to test our students, including those that are in comprehensive distance learning. The challenge is they need to be taken in person. So parents, like they've had the permission in the past, may request that their students opt out of this process. And parents may also request that students take those optional tests. So they have a lot of leverage there in terms of their students' participation, as well as their students' extension opportunities to take all 3 tests in specific grades. We need to offer the tests, but unlike previous years, there will be no penalty for us if we don't hit the 95% of students participating. There's a lot of conversation about good faith efforts. Because we know that some families won't be able to take the test, will choose not to have their students take the test, or in CDL, they may not want their student in person. So those are all factors that we need to consider. If the student doesn't take the test in the time allotted, and again, we'll be looking at following the guidance for the testing time, we don't need to reschedule and continue to give them extended time. It's whatever the students completed in the allotted time is sufficient. Again, the accountability is waived for this year in terms of the participation rates, but the state assessments results will be reported publicly at the end of the spring here after the testing window closes. Next slide, please. So our assessment plan, and again, this is ever evolving landscape, and just a shout out to our principals and Fran and Adria who've been facilitating with middle and elementary schools about potential plans. But our plan at this moment, and also to Carol Hatfield is a magical, magical person. She is able to think outside the box in so many ways and help us. At this point, elementary school, the idea is to have the testing opportunity for the students who are in hybrid to take 1 hour during their instructional time and just take the test. I think it's very difficult to get kids back on a bus on a Wednesday or stay after school. It impacts the transportation, and we think it'll be very difficult for families to try to get their 3rd through 6th graders back on a bus on a Wednesday to get them back to school. So the plan is for their 1 test is to take it sometime. The window has opened right now, and I believe it closes June 5th. So take 1 hour in the instructional day in order to test. Students who are in comprehensive distance learning would be invited to come to school on a specific Wednesday in May. So we would just target it by school, get the communication out to families. We'd be able to provide transportation and invite students to come into school for that 1 test. In middle school, students have to take 2 tests, and there was a lot of discussion about the impact of the very limited instructional time that we have with them. And just although we honor the test and we're hopeful to get some great data for our students, we also wanted to make sure that we preserve that instructional time. So our plan at this point is to provide opportunities for students to come in for their 2 or 2.5 hours for that testing on a targeted Wednesday. And we would need to work with the school-based teams as well as across the district. This would also be the plan to do at high school. We put consider transportation because Carol shared that if we want to continue with our limited in-person instruction and be able to bring some students in on Wednesday, we need to be really cognizant of the impact of the transportation. So it's possible we may say, for Glencoe High School, we're going to bring bus 753, 752, and 580 in on Wednesday the 5th, just so that the bus runs the one route and we don't have multiple buses pulling certain kids to come in for testing. So it will be a little bit of a scheduling challenge, but we're good at schedules, and Carol's a master at schedules. So this is our plan for supporting our students in testing. The next steps, Tom has been working on an online opt-out form that will be connected to some information about testing. We will be able to share the process holistically as a district, but then every school would be able to share specifics about what that school was going to do specifically, which Wednesday in May they might be testing for CDL students, as well as letting parents know about the testing opportunities that their students will be offered during the school day, so that students can be well rested and well prepared for the testing. So we're working on communications as our next step, and starting to work at the school level to map out which Wednesdays might work, so that we work collaboratively with our transportation department to make sure every student has access to testing.
Hey, Dale, if I could just add one thing.
Sure.
Board members, you will be hearing, if you haven't already, that there's going to be some of the larger districts in Oregon that are likely going to opt out of this process, or are basically not going to give the test or not going to give the assessment. And I would keep in mind that those are regional decisions oftentimes that have, there's regional context when those decisions are made. We know that in Washington County, as we've talked to the districts around us, that not only in Hillsboro, but throughout the county, there are a number of families who value getting this feedback, and they value the opportunity to take this test. So our goal is to provide an opportunity to do that in a manner that doesn't impact instructional time in a major way. We know that we will also have a number of families that decide to opt out of this, is particularly this year. So we are trying to meet the needs of the families, not only in our district, but region-wide. We know that's taking place as well. And just wanted to alert you to that. You will see articles about districts that are going to play this differently. There's a lot of districts like us that are also going to provide the opportunity. So if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them on this topic.
I just simply say, Mike, proud to be HSD.
There is one final slide in the update, and then we can circle back to questions on all this. And Beth had a couple of comments on senior activities and graduation.
Thank you, Travis. And it's not much. It's just to acknowledge that I know we are getting close to the end of the school year, and people have lots of questions about what's going to happen with graduations and other senior activities and rites of passage. And I just wanted to let you all know that we are aware of that. We are currently working on some plans based on various scenarios, taking into account what our county risk level might be as we head into May and June. And we'll be ready to announce those plans by the end of the month.
And just before we turn it back over to Martin, there was one item from OSP that was on tonight's agenda that didn't make the agenda, and I think it was in your packet, was an update on the Cognia accreditation process. And instead of looking at that, I'll make a video for you all with a voiceover. It'll be very entertaining, and it'll be a quick glimpse at what you all will be engaged in next week when you're in a focus group, if you're available for that, when you talk to the Cognia accreditation team for the external review. So stay tuned. I'll work with Rose to get that into the packet. I'm sorry we don't have time for that tonight. With that, thank you, Martin Granum.
Thank you, Mike and Travis and Dale. Moving us on to notice of intent to purchase with Jordan Beveridge.
Yes, this item doesn't require a vote or anything at this point. It's more as it is just a notice of intent to purchase and an acknowledgement that we are making these purchases. This is the elementary Chromebooks. We have accelerated that purchase a year as we start to come out of this, as we've taken sort of a leap forward in our technology usage and use of different digital resources. And the plan, as you saw, the new curriculum in Wonders Maravillas, and that implementation and many uses of our technology at the elementary level. These will provide us updated devices with touch screens for our elementary students as they come back, and also a larger number of devices at the elementary than we had originally planned. And so we're making use of some of those funds, plan to make use of some of those funds that Michelle talked about earlier tonight to assist with this purchase as well. And so we have that on the agenda tonight to make you aware of that purchase, both the devices and the support of those devices of the warranty repair.
I invite my colleagues to have any comments. I don't see any. Jordan, I'll just add my compliments to you and your team, your IT superstars, who continue to keep the district equipped in an amazing way. When technology was what we had to absolutely have right now, you delivered it absolutely right now. And this is a part of that. And I'd also like to add to the team, thank you for putting this on the board level for visibility. This is a significant expenditure of bond money, and it makes sense for us to have eyes on it. And I completely concur. So thank you for bringing it up and letting us be a part of that process. I will move us on to discussion time. And I'm going to begin with our student reps. Mia, can I ask you to go first?
I don't believe I have anything to add. I just want to thank you all.
Thank you for joining us this evening. I know it was an extra effort on your part, and it's good to have you here. Devlin.
Sorry, I don't really have that much I would like to say. I do have a somewhat of a concern though about the fact that we're still meeting digitally rather than in person. I mean, considering that we are, well, right now grades kindergarten through 6th grade are meeting in person right now, and starting next week, middle school and high school are going back in. I feel like it would be setting a good example if we were able to meet in person and do that, and do it well. That's really all I have to say. Other than that, I mean, like, well, thank you to everybody who presented and all that. I'm sorry, I don't. Well, thank you for listening, please.
Absolutely, Devin. Thanks for having a voice heard. Mike?
I just wanted to respond to Devlin's comment and just ask that you would take this into consideration. One of the reasons that we're back at school is because the staff has had the opportunity to receive their vaccinations and the board members have not. And so we wanted to be sensitive to that. And we wanted to be not only sensitive to the fact that they haven't had the vaccine yet, and we don't know what comfort level we have across the screen here, as well as the risk factors that are involved. So that's why we have not yet made that move. Once the general population has the opportunity to get vaccinated, then we would have the recommendation to do that. I don't know if any board members would like to chime in as well, but I just wanted to share that thinking.
Well, sure. I'll add to that, Devlin. I appreciate your comments in it. General George Washington said, "Example is the strongest general order," and I've always felt that was true. You know, how we conduct ourselves matters, but how we conduct the public's business for the purposes of a board looks more like Washington County Board of Commissioners and City of Hillsboro City Council than it does the educational role of HSD as a K-12 institution. And those public agencies are not meeting in person because it's problematic to invite public into a room with lots of staff who have to be there, who haven't been vaccinated, including board members. So I view it through the lens of, is it prudent to bring public into a public congregate setting? And I'm just not comfortable personally at this point in time. We're going to get there, but I'm not there yet. So just speaking from my sensitivities, I was very cognizant of the example we're setting with respect to asking staff and students to come back to school. But I just felt that it's not right to have a public meeting in person just yet. But, that's my thoughts. Any other directors want to comment?
On this particular issue, or like our
Yeah.
main commentary?
No, just this particular one.
Yeah, so Devlin and I asked the same question. You know, we're back, students are back in person. Why aren't we? And I felt like the discussion point Mike just made about not everybody on the board has had a chance to be vaccinated made a lot of sense. So I'm hopeful that we may be able to have some kind of, call it a hybrid, call it a synchronized education model board meeting where some of us are in person or some of us are not in person. I'm hopeful that we are able to do that at least once before the end of the year. But yeah, I'd be more comfortable with that if everyone has had an opportunity to be vaccinated.
Thank you. And now, Mike, Superintendent Scott, so up to you for your superintendent time.
You know, I'll keep this brief because we're running a little long here anyway. One of the things that is exciting is that we've had the opportunity to welcome a number of grade levels back to in person, and that just brings with it a lot of enthusiasm. I talked to a 6th grade teacher out at Farmington View this morning, and she was telling me that each year when she starts the school year, one of the things she does is she asks her 6th graders to share what is it that makes them happy. And she said she often gets comments like, my dog makes me happy, certain food makes me happy, my friends make me happy. And she did it last week when they started back. And she said just so many kids just wrote the word school. Just being back in school is what made them happy, and having the opportunity to be together with their friends and to experience learning in the way that they hope for. So I thought that was very telling, and we look forward to next week where we have all grade levels back.
Thank you, Mike. Director Sheehan.
I just want to celebrate so much of the work that has been done and the fact that we are continuing to make headway in just everything. I'm particularly was excited to see how robust our PAC is and how it continues to just reach out to so many of our family members and students who may have been disconnected because of language barriers in the past. And so I look forward to just the PAC continuing to grow, and even other family advisory committees, continuing to grow. And it's exciting to see students back in the classroom. I echo just the enthusiasm, and I enjoyed all of the presentations tonight, and was very pleased to see the headway that we're making, even in the midst of a pandemic. And so just wonderful job to everyone, and thank you. That is all.
Thank you, Director Kim. Director Yadira.
I totally agree with what she had said. The PACs are growing, and it's great. Even from when I first started, that growth has been pretty noticeable. And Emmy's, this is like her 3rd week, and she's totally happy about being able to go to school. And it's been so much, I can just see the change in her being able to go every day. So it's been very nice. And on a different note, at work, I'm helping vaccinate people. So I've been doing that for a couple of weeks now, joining in the effort to get the vaccine out there. So it's been great.
Thank you, Director Martinez. Director Mark.
Hello, everyone. Just jump on the kudos to the technology department bandwagon. We all look different today. We can see the screen a little bit differently today. We made the jump to the Zoom platform. And for those of you who might be watching at home who don't know, one of the intents of this is to facilitate virtualized in-person audience time. So hopefully in 2 weeks, we will take what we've learned from this, and we won't have to have Beth, who did a great job reading the comments. We won't have to have that. We'll have some audience members here to comment on things directly with us, as directly as you can be during a pandemic Zoom session. So kudos to making that switch. I've been asking to try to accommodate that for a little while, and I appreciate you hearing that concern, and hopefully we'll hear the voice of our parents and students in the district sort of unfiltered. Shout out to the Centuries School-Based Health Center in Virginia Garcia for conducting testing at the School-Based Health Center. So as the numbers tick back up, as Travis showed on the graph, I think, we all sort of remember those days of, as the numbers ticked up before, where you would think, all right, is it a sniffle? Is it COVID? I need to go to work, but I don't want to be spreading it asymptomatically. How do I find out? Turns out, School-Based Health Center's got you covered. So be aware that that's available. There's in the hot news, Beth did a great job of pointing out with that, and the link to where the hours are and all that kind of stuff. And to Mike's comments about getting back to class, most of us on this screen are getting beat up pretty heavily online. The internet can be a pretty cruel place. But read the Facebook comments. It's important for us to hear what's going on. But I gotta say, buried in there sometimes is the gem of a parent saying, my son came home from school on Monday and said, "This is the best day ever." And I came home from school on Tuesday and said, "This is the best day ever." And she said, "Well, I thought yesterday was the best day ever." But no, this one's better than that one. So just to hear those stories buried in amongst getting beat up a little bit is still pretty inspiring. I'm so excited and glad to see our students back in classrooms.
Thank you, Director Watson. Director Jackie.
I really enjoyed all the presentations today, and I really like the ones that had videos from our staff. I think that hearing from staff directly is more meaningful to me because they're out there and they're doing the work. One thing that I would maybe like to see in some reports is I love how we focus on the positive, and I love changing learning loss to learning acceleration. I'm going to try to change my thought pattern to be more positive. Like Martin said, it was like, yes, that was great. But maybe we can, but I don't like that word. Maybe we can add to our reports what some of our challenges that we're seeing are, because I know that we have some, and I just think that maybe if we can, I don't know, and how we're looking to meet those challenges and to help fix them. I don't know, that might be, I know that's an ask, so I look to Mike for some direction on that, but I don't know, I was just thinking that, that I love all the positivity, and I would also like to see what we're doing to maybe address some of the challenges that every program has, right? Every report has. So, but I love it. I think it's great. Devlin, I do agree with you. I often think, if we're having kids go back to school, why aren't we meeting in person? And then I understand the vaccine thing, and everybody has their own nervousness about it and their own comfort level about it. So I appreciate technology and moving to this platform to allow us to be more like a public meeting, and then maybe carry it into when we go back in person, keeping the online streaming capability. So I appreciate all of the work that's gone into that and the thought behind it. I really do. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Sposs. Director Lisa.
All right, good evening, everybody. I guess just will say how excited I am that we're starting to get back to school. My second grader's been at it for a while now and has been really enjoying her time in person. Lovely. My fifth grader just got to start as well and is also really enjoying that time. So that's really exciting. I know that the secondary teachers are probably just over the moon for Monday to come. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. And I also just wanted to make sure and give us a little shout out, a little pat on the back. I know that our plan is not perfect. And like Jackie said, we certainly have challenges and there are things that we wish we could do better and do more, like, more time for secondary students, for example. That's a challenge. That's something that we know would be great. But we did get a shout out last week in an article in the Oregonian for having one of the biggest, largest, whatever, highest number of instructional hours for our early elementary students in this area of the state, which was pretty exciting. And so kudos to us for that.
Thank you, Director Allen. I'd like to pass on, speak for our board chair, Erica Lopez, who sends her best regards to everybody on the call in the meeting this evening. And she could not be here, so she asked me to preside, and but she sends her best. For me, I just want to say how blown away by the density of content in this work session. The district is humming along, doing great work on such a wide spectrum of issues and doing world-class, best-in-class level of work, whether it's culturally specific engagement, diversifying our staff, a hot button social issue nationally as school resource officers. I really think we're doing great work, work that could be held up as an example regionally, if not nationally. So I'm exceptionally complimentary of the tremendous work that everybody in the district is doing to meet the needs of our students and our community. In my opinion, you're knocking it out of the park, and it's wonderful to be a part of this team. So that's it for me. And I'll just, I think the word is, we will adjourn, and I will end by saying, proud to be HSD. Good night, everybody.